nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Amen. Born and unborn.
First order of business is the approval of the minutes from October 2nd, 2017, the regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the October 2nd meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Next, we have some showcases tonight. We have a first presentation by FEMA, Carl Anderson and Melinda Hopkins. Do you want to come up to the podium? Good evening. They have a presentation on the National Flood Insurance Program and the Community Rating System. So welcome here to Narragansett.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Carl Anderson. This is Melinda Hopkins. Melinda's with the state. I work for FEMA out of the regional office in Boston. I'm a floodplain management specialist there. And I'm here today to present the town of Narragansett with a plaque recognizing their participation in the CRS program. That stands for the Community Rating System. It's a program we have at FEMA for communities that participate in the National Flood Insurance Program who wish to go above and beyond the minimum standards for that program. And it's an incentive program, and the incentive that we offer from FEMA's side is discounts on flood insurance rates for people in the community. So as a Class 7 in the CRS program, your residents are eligible for discounts of up to 15% on their flood insurance premiums. And I will give you just a little summary of what that means for your community in terms of dollar amounts. The average savings for a policy in Narragansett will be $169. For those that are in the highest risk areas, it'll be approximately $294. And when you add all this up for all the policyholders in Narragansett, it's roughly $250,000 per year. So that's a great success story, and we're glad that you're committed to managing your floodplains, and we're happy to provide these discounts in recognition of that. That's about it. I do have a plaque here. I guess before I get to the plaque, I will ask if anyone on the council has any questions for me about the program or anything like that.
I had a quick question. So you
Sure.
said, so eligible for discounts, how do residents that are in flood zones actually go about? Do they have to just contact their insurance company or agent or FEMA directly? How do they go about getting that?
They would work through their agent. Narragansett has been participating for a number of years. They were formerly at what we call a Class 8, which was a 10% discount. This is an increase, which is why I'm here, to Class 7, 15%. When the resident goes to either buy a new flood insurance policy or renew the policy, at that point, the discount will kick in. So this was effective, I believe, in May, right? So this was effective May 1st of this year. So some of your residents will already have, seen the extra discount, and then for those that haven't renewed yet since then, they'll get that discount at that point. The insurance agents will do it automatically. It'll be shown in their system. They don't have to do anything special or ask for it, anything like that.
And I just had a question on for the town staff. Is there anybody that you work with directly on the town staff that we should give kudos to or applause to?
We worked with Jill Sabo and Cindy Duckworth and Tony Santilli. We worked very closely, especially with Jill and Cindy. They were amazing in this process.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Jill's been working on this project since I was on the land trust with her. So, Mike, thank you for your department for leading the way. I mean, this is incredible to offer the town.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so the plaque is right here. I will just read it. So it says, right at the top it says FEMA, and then Town of Narragansett successfully participates in the National Flood Insurance Program Community Rating System. The community has undertaken a series of meaningful activities to protect its citizens from losses caused by flooding and has significantly exceeded the requirements for NFIP participation and effective floodplain management. Signed by Roy Wright, Deputy Associate Administrator, FEMA Insurance and Mitigation, May 1st, 2017.
Next, we have a presentation from the chief tonight on the immigration policy, so we welcome him to the podium, and he's going to speak on the immigration policy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The purpose of this presentation is to clarify the practices of the police department in regards to illegal immigration enforcement. It should be noted that this is not an area that we deal with very often. In fact, the last two instances that we've had where we've actually worked with immigration was 2011, and the time before that was 2006. And in both those cases, we had very serious charges on the defendant. One circumstance, it was distribution of heroin. In the other case, it was a B&E with a secondary child molestation charge. So this is not something that comes up in our everyday business, so to speak. But given the discourse in the nation over immigration, there's been some concerns. So I did some policy work so that I can get our practices down on paper, and it's been published to the town website. If you go to departments, the police department, and then scroll down to policies and procedures, you will see a policy under immigration issues. The actual title is Illegal Immigration and Consular Notification. And then there's a second policy that I did work on titled Bias-Based Profiling Prohibited. Both deal with the issue. And then just to make it simple for people who may have any questions about the matter, I did a 3-page memo on frequently asked questions. If you like, I can go through a couple of them to give you an idea on what the resource is like. The first question is, does NPD arrest people for being undocumented immigrants? Answer is no. Being an undocumented immigrant is a federal civil violation. NPD officers do not have the authority or responsibility for enforcing federal civil laws that regulate an immigrant status in the United States. Follow-up question to that is, can an officer stop a person to determine the person's immigration status? The answer is no. Under NPD policy 32002, bias-based policing prohibited, officers may not stop, detain, or question a person based solely on the person's suspected or actual immigration status. In addition, federal law restricts local police officers from stopping an individual based on the perceived immigration status of the person or enforcing federal civil immigration law absent an agreement and delegation of authority by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Some border states will have are involved in what's called the 287 program, where police officers actually receive training on immigration enforcement. They're deputized. No one is asking us to do that, and in fact, we have it prohibited in our policy from us joining in that. Our cooperation with immigration is in cases like I referred to, where we've actually had, where it's been actual criminal cases, serious felony investigations. We don't ask people for the green cards on car stops or on regular calls for service. We don't ask victims or witnesses or anybody else about their immigration status. To put it simply, it's not our job. The same way I wouldn't audit your taxes, I'm not going to ask you about your immigration status. It's the mission of the federal government and not the police department. So if anybody has any questions about this after reading the document, you can shoot me an email or give the station a call. But after you go through all these questions, I think you'll have a pretty firm grasp on it. Do you have any questions?
No, he said it's on the website. We don't actually have the documents.
I emailed it to you today.
Oh, today,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
So,
And
yeah,
it's-
so we're
and
going to
it's-
review them, and I want to thank you for your work on that policy. We'll review them, and then if we have questions.
Yeah, how did this come about? Why are you in front of us? If we got two
Well-
violations in the last, since 2006.
Well,
why
for a
is
couple of reasons. Number one, the ACLU has been pushing an ordinance
Yeah, well, let's
throughout the
forget
state of Rhode
about
Island.
that. I don't want to, I'm not interested in the
Yep.
ACLU and their policy.
And then there was,
As long as our policy doesn't
Right.
violate federal regulation, I'm on board what you're doing, Chief. Thank you.
okay,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your work on that.
thank you.
And finally, tonight for a presentation, we have, I think Mike DeLuca has an award from the State Planning Council for the approval of the comp plan. And, yeah. And you have the plaque too, right?
So, thank you, Madam President. As you know, this has been a long time coming, And I just wanted to take this opportunity to let the town council know that we finally got there and got the approval of the comprehensive plan. Here it is right here. I've got copies for all of you in my office. Unfortunately, I don't have the ring binders to put it in. Those are coming in the next couple of days, and I'll have copies out for all of you by next week. So just a brief overview, and real brief, as my boss has given me the eye. As you know, this is a long, arduous
I'm going to put the timer
task.
on.
Go ahead. This is a long, arduous trail that we ran. It started in September 2012 with an open workshop, over 65 people at the towers. The second workshop was in January 2013, another 50 or 60 people. From then forward, we had another 30-odd public meetings, workshops, and as you know, public hearings. A lot of issues were addressed in the topics of land use, housing, economic development, community services, open space, natural resources, energy, and hazardous mitigation. And we managed to pull together this document so that now in the future, for the coming 10 years, we will have a document by which we can direct the big picture decision-making for the town and land use decisions. We can seek out guidance from this document to consider big proposals, whether they be from public agencies, private agencies, semi-public agencies. So we're very happy to have gotten this certificate.
And so I just wanted to thank you for your leadership on the comprehensive plan. And I know at the state council planning meeting, you had a lot of people with a lot of positive working relationships through that time, and you were recognized at the state level on that. So we want to thank you for the work that you've done for the town, and I know that the state realizes how hard you worked.
Thank you.
So you can turn the plaque over to the manager, since we did a photo op at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the open forum. So if you'd like to come to the podium, please just state your name, your address, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anybody wishing to speak at open forum? Oh, just Stanley? Come on up.
Just want to, we hear a lot about the bad college kids in town, so I thought I'd address that a little bit. And I want to say, I love college kids. And I want to say that because I have 2 kids that were college kids, and now over 40 years old, and I love them. I presently have a grandson who's a college kid. I love him. And I want to also love the landlord who allowed my grandson to live in a rental home. Because my grandson, at the university, he had a space no bigger than a closet to live in the dormitory. I went there, and here's a kid that had a room all by himself here. Now he goes over there, he's stuck with another guy that he doesn't know the personality or nothing, and he's got to live and sleep. It was a terrible, from my position, it was a terrible situation. He certainly not a place that I would like my son or grandson to go to. So a couple years later, he said, "Hey, Dad, Papa, I'd like to go and rent down Narragansett." I said, "Well, you want to do that? College kids are pretty bad." No, I got some buddies. We'll go down there and we'll study. And what he told me, my sons never told me. What he told me at the dormitory, he could smell the drugs. Here he is at dormitory smelling drugs. The noise, unbearable. I couldn't study there. I had to run to the library, try to study there. Girls stayed overnight, making a lot of noise with the guys. It's radios are blasting. So it was really a bad place for some people. I was sure you would think you wouldn't want your son and daughter in that situation. And therefore, I have to say I love the landlords, but they give these, they're not children now, they're very close to adults, an alternative, the kind of life I would always want for my child or my grandchild. And to discriminate against these people, college kids, to me is so ugly. Every time I hear it, I get upset. And, you know, my grandson is not that terrible college kid. He's got the dean's list with a computer science degree going on. So he's studying, he's mature. But yet he's categorized with all the so-called bad college kids in this town, and we make laws and all kinds of ideas around the bad college kid. That needs to stop.
Thank you, Stanley.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak at open forum? Sue?
Hi, Sue Bush, 65 Robinson Street. I am here tonight to speak with you on behalf of the Narragansett Historical Society. And every fall, first week in October, it's been a few weeks, but the town council meetings have been very busy, so I waited till tonight. We have the Ocean Road 10K, and that race was about 300 people, a little fewer than 300 people its first year, and that was 5 years ago. This past October, it was over 1,700 runners. So the race has pretty much maxed out, I think, and but the more runners that run, the more it benefits the Historical Society. So as a small nonprofit, we really appreciate the funds that we receive from that race. So we'd like to thank the cooperation of everybody in town that's involved, from the town council, the town manager, the police department, the fire department, parks and rec department, and the highway department. We really appreciate all the cooperation and the hard work that went into planning that race. That's run by Gray Matter Marketing, and they do a fantastic job. And they make really cute T-shirts, which you all have one of.
Thank you, thank you.
I hope you like them. And we actually are able to sell these for $10 each to make more money for the Historical Society, if anybody would want one. Aren't they cute? They do a great job. Great for beach wear, sleepwear. We have medium, large, and extra large. You can order them through the website, or contact us through the website or the Facebook page, or just call me. But anyway, thank you again. We really appreciate all the coordination and the cooperation and the hard work. And I want you to know, too, that people do this as an annual event. They come from New York, they come from Massachusetts, Connecticut. We had some people come from Florida this year, and they said, we love it, it's so well run. We come every year, and they stay in our hotels, and they eat at our restaurants. They ride the trolley. So, and that's another thing. We appreciate the trolley tour, who also gave a free ride to some of the VIPs that were in attendance at the race. So anyway, thank you very much for a successful
Thank you, Sue.
event. Take care.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing, oh, come on up.
Hi, my name is Kim Plant, and I'm on 235 Narragansett Ave East in Wakefield, actually, but it's a mile from the pier. I'm not sure
If it's on the agenda, you can't speak to it now.
Okay,
Okay,
that
so,
was my question.
yeah, when
Well-
it comes up, when we read the motion, then you can come up and speak to it.
Perfect.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, looking at the clock, we have 10 minutes. I think we can take a look at the consent agenda, and do we have any council members that would like to pull an item from the consent agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Motion passes for the consent agenda. We have old business, but
I'll move to move up item number 10 from
From
new
new
business
business.
to the next item.
do we have a second on that?
I'll second that.
All those in favor of moving it up?
Aye.
Aye.
We're voting to move up number
Oh,
10.
I said aye.
Oh, Patrick, did you too?
Yeah.
5-0, motion passes. All right, motion 10. A motion to allow the Narragansett Education Foundation, a nonprofit 501c, to host a warming tent during the Festival of Lights event on Sunday, December 3rd, 2017 at the Memorial Park. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Can I have you come up, Chris, and just speak to this?
Thank you. I'm Chris Catanzaro, 79 Secluded Drive, and I am also on the board of directors for the Narragansett Public Education Foundation. As you mentioned, we're a 501(c), and all of the money, 100% of the money that we raise goes to the students in the Narragansett public school system. Our Our core values are to enhance curriculum, promote programs, enhance, enrich, and maintain excellence in the Narragansett school system. The warming tent idea is sort of hopping on what the Parks and Rec has created with this wonderful Festival of Lights event. We would like to have a tent. It is a 20 by 30 tent. It holds about 30 people. We'd like to get people in if it's hopefully it's a very cold day. It will be heated. We'd like to get people in, get them warm, and share some of the wonderful things that our Education Foundation is doing, like Spark grants to teachers that apply and scholarships for our students. Last June, we gave away our first scholarship, the Martin Family Scholarship. It was a $5,000 scholarship to a very, very worthy student. So the tent, again, it holds about 30 people. We believe that people will be circulating in and out throughout the day. And we will be serving adult beverages, which hopefully everything will be donated and we'll be able to raise some money while we're raising awareness. Again, Parks and Rec has done such a wonderful job with this event. We thought that having the Education Foundation be a part of it, a family event, would be something that would just sort of go together rather nicely.
I just had a couple of questions on it,
Sure.
Chris. So one of the things, it's an add-on to the Festival of Lights, because in the past, the Lions, we serve hot chocolate, and somebody else brings cider. So this is just an added event to that event, correct?
Correct, yes.
And the tent is going to be on the other side. It's not going to be where we light the tree. It's going to be over by the towers in Memorial Park. So
Exactly.
Right. And as far as the time, it's not going to be all day, so it's not going to be a place where people can stop and consume alcohol. We're going to limit that to 3 to 5, something like that, 3 to 5:30.
Well, what we were hoping, after we discussed that, Susan, we actually hoped to extend the hours because of the sunk costs that we have in insurance and police details for the event. Again, the tent is meant to get people in and out. It is not a beer hall. It is not a beer tent. It is a place to get a warming tent, come in, perhaps have a beverage, learn about the foundation and what we're doing, and move on to other events. We don't expect people to be staying there. It's enclosed. You can't see anything outside of it. We've got a captive audience, and that's really what we're looking to do.
So what would the time be then, Chris? When would it start and when would it be finished?
Well, again, with the over $1,000 in insurances and police details, we would like to try to run for as many hours as we could, as many hours as you would allow us to do. And again, you know, we will have a police detail there, and based on that officer's discretion, if he feels that this is going away from its intent, we'll be the first ones to pull the plug on it and walk away. We do not. We want to work with the town, especially Parks and Rec. We do a lot of work with Parks and Rec already with our flag football programs and whatnot. We want to continue that relationship. This is not to take away from that event. We just simply want to gain some awareness for what we're doing.
Oh,
I have a question.
Is there maybe another method you could do? Oddly enough, it took me a while to figure out what a warming tent was. And then people in town began calling, and a couple of the areas of concern for people are, this has been a family event, and this is changing the direction a little bit. Now hearing how small the tent is and how you want to extend the hours, is there maybe something else you could sell so it could be more inclusive? Because certainly children won't be allowed in the tent, right? And so has been historically a family event. But
right. Well, there will be.
What are you projecting as far as making it for, you can have 20 to 30 people in a tent for a couple hours?
We don't know. And again, we're hoping people are circulating through the tent. So we don't want people in there for hours and hours on end. We want them circulating through the tent, coming in, getting warm, perhaps having a beverage, and then moving on.
So your purpose is for them to be educated on what you offer?
On what we're doing, yes, exactly.
So maybe there's something else you can sell besides be more inclusive and more, I mean, we've done a great job at making this a family event, and that's the only thing I'm thinking and I'm hearing from people is that this is a little bit outside the box of what we have with fireworks and Santa Claus and lighting the Christmas tree.
Well, I disagree with you slightly in that if you go to the Willows, Willows is a family-style restaurant, and there are people consuming alcoholic beverages with their kids there as well. We're not serving food.
But this is a town of Narragansett event that's gone on for how many years, and you're changing the flavor and direction of it a bit.
So can I just ask, because I know that there was some communications, can I hear from the parking director, can I hear from Steve Wright as far as how the town feels about it and Tom Test? Because I know there was some communications and as far as changing the direction, and that's why I was trying to highlight was an add-on, and I actually spoke to the superintendent of the schools, and we talked a little about the exchange and what they do, and he supported it because he said that's what they do. If it were at school, it would be a different event, but since it's in the community, since we were going to have a police officer, he felt very comfortable with it. So I just wanted to hear from the town staff to see what they were thinking, too.
Yes, and so we're a fairly new education foundation. We've been only at this for 2 years. We're following the lead of other ed foundations across the state, and 99% of their events are tied to town events offering that next level. So this event was actually it came about from our talk with other foundations. And Charahoe is really our lead foundation. They have a $2 million endowment for their public schools, and he runs these events at nearly every town event that they do of any scale. So, sorry.
Thanks, Chris.
Good evening. So we certainly did have our reservations regarding this. We've been holding this family event for many years, as you stated. However, talking to Chris and vetting this through, the hours we were approached with were from 3 to 5:30. So, and having it restricted to a small tent adjacent to the towers for that time frame with a detailed officer with restrictions on that time frame within that tent. We thought for a pilot program for this year, we would try it, and then we make our decision to move forward for recommendations for next year. We did have our reservations, and that's how we stipulated it. We at least would have our recommendation for this year only.
I have a
And-
question.
Go ahead.
Go
No,
ahead.
I just thought the limited hours would help, so it wasn't like all day going on like when we were doing, the other events. If it were limited, then it would be a little more controlled, and if it was successful, then we could look at extending.
And that's how it was proposed to us.
Okay.
So just before you go, logistically, where is the tent?
It would be adjacent to the towers in the Memorial Veterans Park
So
area.
back that way?
Yeah, in that
And then the
grassy area.
tree lighting is near the gazebo on
In the
this way?
gazebo park area, correct.
And then what are the hours for the beer tent on the Blessing of the Fleet?
The beer
I'm just
tent-
curious, yeah.
the
When
beer
we
tent-
open the beer tent, the Blessing of the Fleet, what time do we
Four-
shut that down?
Like, 4 to 11.
Yeah,
40,
that's in the
about.
afternoon till 11 o'clock at night.
So I would anticipate that we would probably want this warming tent, if everybody's kind of vacated the premises, we'd want that kind of the same hourly kind of respect for the neighborhoods, right, to say, okay, it's time to go, right?
Well, this event, Festival of Lights, ends at 5:30.
5:30.
It ends at 5:30.
Oh,
So it would be over,
okay.
yeah. So
I was
that's
thinking
why.
it was later last year.
This motion in front of us tonight, though, is, I know Chris just spoke to, all day, but I recommended that maybe we close that gap to make sure it passes, to look at like 3 to 5:30, something like that to start. I don't know how the council's feeling about all day versus the 3 to 5:30, considering what I just heard Councilwoman Lawler say. I mean, would you be satisfied with 3 to 5:30? Patrick?
I'm good with, I love the proposal, I love what you're doing, I think it's great, I think the awareness is great, I have no problem with what you're serving, the police detail, I have no problem. And I forgot, I thought it was later last year, so if people are gone by a respectful time during the evening, then I'm fine with it. I thought for some reason it went until like 10
No,
o'clock
it's just
last
until
year.
the lighting, 5:30.
Maybe that was another event, right?
I have mixed feelings, honestly. I'm trying to see what everyone else is thinking.
Let's hear from the folks.
What do I have to do about the public hearing? Can we finish this conversation? I thought this was going to be fairly quick, but it looks like, so do I have to stop and technically,
You
Mark?
got 2
or can I-
minutes.
I think technically you do.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the discussion on the warming tent, and we'll hold off until after the public hearing. I'm sorry. So, yeah, it will be the first item when we come back. Okay. I need a motion to open the public hearing. A public hearing on the proposed ordinance and amendment of Chapter 70, okay, of the Code of Ordinances of Town of Narragansett entitled Taxation and Finance. We have a move on the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor of opening the public hearing? Aye. 5-0, the motion passes. The public hearing is open. Anybody wishing to speak on the taxation policy?
Please state your name and your address.
Stephen Ferrandi, 44 Sylvan Road.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, council members. Here we are again a year later from the last tax structure possibility of a change. Last year it was from 1.5. This year it's 1.25, so we're about half as it was. So whatever tax was going to go to the residential area is about half that. What I'd like to say is arguing against tax relief is like, arguing against clean air. Who doesn't want clean air? So this is a tough one, but I think the way it is this way, it's not really going to accomplish what's aimed at for the small businesses. I think there might be other potential ways of doing it. I mean, we really have no way of knowing who is going to get the actual relief. If the person, commercial property is rented, how do we know that the potential tax savings is going to be onto the person's rent? That's one. Could be of a triple net lease, maybe something like that would happen. Right now, from what I've read, that the commercial tax rate is already lower in Narragansett from 6 of the 9 cities and towns in South County. So, I just think it could be targeted a little bit better. Maybe you could target it directly for the small business by how many number of employees that they have. And I just think at the last meeting, there was pretty contentious, and there was a lot of arguments about there's different tax structures. There's what's called a 3-tier system. So, there's a lot of confusion, and I've even spoken to some of the business owners, and I asked several about a 3-tier system, and they said, I don't see any issue about transferring the tax. They just want a tax reduction, basically. I just think this isn't the right way to aim it at to try to accomplish what you're going to try to do.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Richard?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Would you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Richard Vangermersch, Vangermersch, and I live at, we'll use the 55 Osceola address tonight. This has some merit if and only if houses that are rented are treated as commercial property. You can talk to me until, I guess, until the liquor is stopped being sold at that particular foundation's function. You will never convince me that someone who is renting out a house is not in commerce. Commerce is all sorts of things. It is more than what a shop selling something, a liquor store, or a restaurant. Anyone who rents a house and is in commerce. And until we change that, we have no business changing this. Yes, if we start looking at the houses that truly are in commerce here, and anyone who rents a house is in commerce, then I see 125% as being just and fair. But it is pure nonsense to think you can reduce business taxes and let people who have been involved in commerce for years renting out houses go scot-free. Absolute nonsense.
Thank you, Richard. Anybody else wishing to speak at the public hearing? Stanley?
Stanley, would
Stan
you,
Wojciechowski, Narragansett.
would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
We're talking year-round residents of the town. Should one resident be taxed more than another resident? I spoke many times having single tax rate, but now maybe now just focus on a resident I don't care whether they rent, own, I don't care any of the issues, a resident year-round of this town. Shall we target any specific one called tenant? Again, as a landlord type, I don't pay the taxes. The person in that building pays the taxes. I can't pay the taxes for the numerous people I rent to. They're paying the taxes, not me, not the landlord. It's the people living there. They pay me the taxes. And I've chosen over the years not to raise taxes on many of them. Because I have to admit, I rent to the poorest people in this town. The grandmother paying $595, she just told me she's leaving, can't afford it, going to work to live with her son. The single mother just told me she wants to move, she can't afford $595. A couple with a child paying $895 for a two-bedroom, can't afford it, move to North Kingstown. And in fact, in two of these cases, they begged me to give them the security deposit back ahead of time. Normally you give that back after they move, after it's clean and all that. They said, please give me my security deposit back now so I can have enough money so that I can go somewhere else to rent. You know, maybe if you paid attention to some of these situations, maybe the single mother would get married eventually and have more kids and be in town and be a resident of this town and the families you want. It'd be nice to have a grandmother here, or a couple. But your tax policy is kind of against them, against these poor people. So you're going to be against, typical Narragansett, you know, very rich people. So heck with the small people. There's not too many poor people. So we can just kind of forget them. They're not going to vote that much. I talked to them many times, and I don't know who to vote for. They don't pay attention, whatever. Not as responsible maybe as others. I don't know. And we don't have enough of them here, so therefore I guess you don't have to worry about it getting voted out. But I see them, and I have compassion for them. And I would hope that you would consider this 125 as the first step in the step to make it equal. The first step, 125, that's not a big step. First step for these poor people, so I don't have to tell them that they got to pay more rent. Mary just sent out a list of about 4 or 5 people. Please consider that.
Thank you, Stanley. Wynn?
Wynn Hames, 30 Wood Avenue.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'm just against this. Basically, you're raising the taxes on the residents of the town. And like Stanley said, but kind of a convoluted way, but you would be raising the taxes on the poorest people in town. The businesses in this town can afford, it's still, I think it was said that we're the lowest in South County, but we're the 3rd or 4th lowest in the state as far as the commercial taxes. The businesses here aren't hurting for taxes. If you want to do something for the small businesses, get together and come up with a small business tax plan instead of giving the majority of this to Point Youth Country Club, Dunes Club, Stop and Shop. You have to turn around and concentrate on the smaller businesses along Boone Street. You know, don't raise the taxes on the residents themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Wynn. Harry?
Harry Schofield, 9 Atlantic. Oops.
Harry, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So, this is not an unfamiliar topic, and as you all know, I, together with many others, on behalf of NPRA and most of the other neighborhood associations, and many of the residents have come to this microphone consistently in these tax debates and requested that you people seriously consider and look, hard at the benefits of the three-tier system. We've requested that. Residents have requested that. We, the neighborhood associations, have supported, many of you for election based on your, stated support for the three-tier system as one of the key issues we look for. You all know that the same discount you wish to give to commercial businesses can be done via the three-tier system without any impact to the taxes to the residents of the town who live in the town. You also know that 3/4 of the landlords do not live in this town. You know all this. You know, in fact, that the three-tier system can give both owner-occupied residents and commercial businesses an even lower rate than the system you're considering by simply shifting even more of the burden to landlords where it rightly belongs. And this issue about the impact on poor people, while there's some concern there, is a bit of a red herring, because the fact is, as was just pointed out, these rental properties are really businesses. And as Steve pointed out, the fact is that there are other ways to help small businesses. And as Wynn just said, and Richard alluded to this, there is no business in Narragansett that I'm aware of that's in danger of leaving because of its tax rate. And if you show me one, I'll show you a business that has some competitive issues that are at the root of its problems, not tax rate. So the three-tier system has more flexibility. It's been promoted by, most of us representing the neighborhood associations. You don't have to elect it tonight, but you should at least, once and for all, direct the Finance Committee to take a serious look at it and measure its, attributes as we have consistently proposed them to you. Because it is a more flexible system for you. It's the best system for Narragansett, given the demographics of this town and the dramatic shift to rental properties that's happened over the last 20 years. And so there's nothing you can do with this two-tier system that's been proposed. You can't do a better job of with the three-tier system. And so I'll say once and for all, on behalf of all of the residents and neighborhood groups that have stood up here and asked for this time and time again for the past year, that you need to take a serious look at it, direct the Finance Department to study it and present their findings and really understand the possibilities there. And if you don't, we'll have to take it into account during the next election. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. I don't know that I ever supported the three-tier tax ever on any political campaign, but anybody else wishing to speak? Anybody from the council wishing to speak on this?
Hi, Stephen Bellis, 95 Inez Street, Narragansett.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Why not? Sure. I just don't understand the justification for a tax decrease on local businesses. As a taxpayer, I'd like to see something, something demonstrated that would warrant a tax decrease. If there's any local businesses that are suffering, some of the larger ones that were mentioned here tonight, if they're really having a tough time at it, or the business is in a downturn, I think as a taxpayer, we should need to know that. If it's a need of urgency, something has to be done soon for this, maybe you could, as a town council, come up with maybe some kind of fundraiser and maybe put a thermometer on the outside of the building here just to collect some donations from people in town, and then we could see how that goes, and then maybe as taxpayers, we could, kick in the rest. But I don't think there's anything out there that demonstrates it.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else wishing to speak? Anybody from the council? So this has been a complicated debate for a long time, and I think we've all shown our positions over the time, but I'm just going to repeat mine. I was not for the 1 tax rate. What did we do? We amended it to the 2 tax rate.
Repeal.
I thought the motion that was put before us, that Mr. Moretti and Mr. Murray put on, was a compromise. I struggle with it. I voted yes on the first reading of it, but I do struggle with it because I do see the highest taxpayers are all the big companies that we talked about, Rite Aid, Stop and Shop, and I'm wondering how it's really gonna help the small business. Now, I have some amendment that might be the will of the council, because I don't think that we're gonna please everybody in the room, and I don't think this council is gonna get exactly to the right place tonight. But one of the amendments is we can look at, instead of the 125, we could look at the 140. Just throwing it out. Another amendment can be, we can send a letter to the General Assembly and ask them to authorize us to have the authority to give the small businesses in the town of Narragansett some kind of tax break. Now, we need to know, and I need to know, what are the small businesses? I had a number of small businesses call me today, but what are we considering the small businesses that we want to support and help in the town of Narragansett? So, and I think what Steve just said, in demonstrating how they're doing, who's on the list? Who do we really, who demonstrates that they are a small business in the town? So we can look at changing the number to compromise, we can look at a letter, or we can vote up and down what we have. But I'm pleading this council, because I am obviously the swing, because I voted on the 2-tier tax, and this side of the table wants 125. So I'm trying, as I always do, try to find that middle ground, that compromise, that we're all gonna walk away with a little something at this point. And so I don't want it to be a bloodbath. I want it to be a good conversation where we can all agree that one of our priorities is to help small business, and how are we gonna do that? Is this the right formula? And if we wanna talk about that, I do want Laura to come up just to, as the finance director, because I look to her and the manager, and I look to them as the leaders of the town to help us define and to make a good decision. So Laura, before the council weighs in, can you just come up and just go over the facts on what you have in front of you, the numbers, and what you think is gonna, what the impact's gonna be, and who is it gonna be on, and before we make those decisions.
And just before that, Laura, Susan, we hear what everyone has to say, and then the motion is,
Yeah, we'll
after
have
the
to-
hearing, we got to close, but, so we wouldn't make an amendment right now, but we would talk about where we are,
Just throwing out the amendment ideas, because I hope as we close that we have something we can all walk away with and say, it was a really good decision for the town, and everybody felt like there was movement. We helped the small business, but we didn't hurt the residents, and there's a middle. We're not gonna, we're not gonna get everybody to be really happy about the tax policy, right? So Laura?
Okay, so first of all, this is to put a percentage difference between a commercial class and a residential class. Not necessarily all small business, but anyone who is in a separate class. So it also includes your commercial tangible property. So your classes can only be up to 150% different. And the proposal here is just to make that variance to 125%. So it's not just on small business, it's on all commercial property. Second of all, you were questioning the top 5 commercial real estate taxpayers, and they are the properties at 91 Point Judith Road, which is the Stop and Shop Plaza, 137 Boston Neck Road, which is the Dunes Club, 150 Windermere Point Judith Country Club, Woodruff Ave, which is the Rite Aid Plaza, 1 Beach Street, which is the Aqua Blue and Theater, and 30 Kingstown Road, which is actually Beechwood Apartments. So those are your top commercial real estate taxpayers.
The Beechwood Apartments, no, exactly, why don't you explain to the folks at home, that's an elderly facility, right? And if they're taxed, the building owners pay the taxes, correct?
Yes,
Now,
it's the owner of the building.
Since it's a subsidized building, correct, by the federal government, many of those tenants are subsidized. They have, the building owners have to go and ask the federal government, can we raise the rents? And if we lower the taxes by 1/6, tonight, they're going to have a tough time raising taxes on those elderly folks that are on fixed incomes. Many of these elderly people grew up in this town, and this is not the only facility. Stanley has a couple commercial properties because they're more than 5 units. And he has elderly and lower income people, and the rents will be stabilized, just like the Driftwood Apartments, just like South Pier Road, and some of these other big commercial rental entities. Because they're subsidized, they have to ask the federal government to raise taxes. I mean, to raise the rents. And they're not going to be given that opportunity because we're lowering their taxes. So that's something to think about. I don't want to hear about the Dunes Club. I don't want to hear about Stop and Shop, who employs probably 100 people in town, in this town. The cost of this. Let's talk about the cost. Let's go, if you want to talk about numbers. 19 cents. Is that the correct number for all properties? The cost, 19 cents?
The tax rate on the commercial would go from $15.84 to...
Right, that would drop down by $2.64.
Yeah, let her do the number.
To $13.47.
Wait. You said 1584 to...
$13.47.
$2.64 drop.
And the residential rate would go from $10.56 to $10.77, but that's on the base right now before revale.
Right, the new
Yeah,
assessment.
but I want to be clear, there's a residential rate, and then there's a residential rate that is lower with a homestead.
homestead, you
So
are
when you do the math on a homestead, then the effective rate is below the current rate by a bunch, depending on your value.
10% of your assessment.
So, just be clear, there is a residential rate with a homestead that is an effective rate that's low. Then there's exemptions on top of that if you're elderly or a veteran, et cetera, et cetera. So there are exemptions that apply to full-time residents that live in their properties.
Right.
Correct.
Then there's the second residential property rate, which is with no exemptions because you don't live in it. And then there's a commercial rate. So that's, right, that's accurate.
That is accurate.
Okay. Just want to be clear.
All right, let's get back to the cost. It's basically 19 cents per thousand for every property in Narragansett, Laura, approximately?
21 cents, yeah.
21 cents, okay, 21 cents. The commercial property owner, which represents about 6% of the properties in town, will receive a $2.64 reduction in their property taxes. It's going to cost us 19 cents, 21 cents per thousand. This is a major reduction and a little boost for businesses who many are family-owned, generationally in this town, who depend on their summers. And this past summer, just about every Saturday was cloudy. Talk to some of these business owners. Ask them how their summer is. Ask them if they're going to need commercial tax reduction. Now, I don't ask commercial properties owners to come here anymore. I used to, but they've been disappointed. I'm like Lucy with the football, and they're disappointed. And I thought we had the votes. I thought we had a commitment here, but so be it.
So a non-emotional discussion about just the numbers. I just want to. So if I've been doing math for over a year now, and I've studied the 3-tier tax plan, which is a very solid plan. I looked at the homestead. I've looked at all these numbers left and right. If there were support for the best way to do it, then I would do it. And I campaigned, and you can go back and look at the videotape, that I said the best way to effectively collect taxes, or the most efficient way. The reason why I'm saying that is if you look at the actual dollars, and I used just $400,000 as a value, to go from 1058 to 1077 with a homestead will cost the average taxpayer $86 on their tax bill. $86. So you can argue left and right whether or not it's effective to lower the commercial rate, whether or not they deserve it, whether or not it's important, whether or not it's going to help the community. Well, I believe that philosophically, it certainly will help the community. I've been thanked numerous times by the businesses in town that I frequent that any reduction obviously is welcome. And yes, they profit from their savings, and that's okay. But you can't continue to expect, and I know people will argue, well, they'll come anyway, there's a captive audience. It's $86 at $125.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Moretti.
Thank you, Laura.
Both of you on this side, thank you both.
Thank you, Laura. We started this tax policy discussion, and I remember when we kind of kicked off trying to get there wasn't a lot said about the commercial side. It was finally getting the homestead exemption over the finish line. And when I talked about the clean homestead, I said that was based on where we were, because people in town, as assessments have gone up over the years, which is the traditional reason for giving people a homestead, right? That's their home, they've lived in it for decades, and now they've seen these assessments go up. That's the remedy. Second, we have larger public safety public safety departments than we need because of the problems that we have associated with partying and rental issues. And that's a fact, because for a small town with 16,000 residents, most towns of that size don't have the public safety infrastructure that we have, but we need it because of that unique situation. So when we went forward, there was, 12 years Susan had been on the council. Fortunately, I got up to the State House, testified 3 times. It was not an easy process, trust me. I was there. I know people who worked on it 10 and 12 years ago, and they weren't able to get over the finish line because of special interests at the State House stopping it. So, but going for that, the whole point is to bring people's taxes lower, not to make them $86 higher. The whole point of the homestead was that you'd have more in your pocket as a taxpayer. So at the time, I did say we could come down 10% on the business side as well. Bring that down so that the businesses aren't paying for the homestead, essentially. Go to 140. We've been through a lot since then. As an olive branch at the last meeting, I said we could go for that as a 140, because this is the reason. We talk about $86. The 140 is something when we get to budget in April, we can scrimp and save, and if my colleagues will work with me, we can scrimp and save in the budget to make up that difference. 125, going to 125 is $1 million in the budget. It's too much. So,
Not $1 million.
Well, it is. That's the numbers we've got. So, I just, in the interest, Dr. Van Germisch did say it. He said at some point you have to come together. We've had the campaign about this issue. This was a big issue in the campaign. When I was going door to door, people came up to me more than any issue, actually more than any issue, more than Grady Miller that first time, more than Deepwater, more than even the homestead itself. People wanted that repeal. They really felt their taxes were being raised unfairly. So, but I would go to the 140, be 140, your effective rate for the homesteaders is about 90, and 100 would be your normal rate, 140, 100, 90. I like the 3-tier, and we can still explore the 3-tier, but in the interest, again, this is compromise, in the interest of a compromise, I would go for the 140. I don't know where my other colleagues are on that. I know Susan's indicated some support. Thank you.
Jill?
Susan said a couple of things, too, that were really interesting. How are we going to define what a small business is? We don't have that answer, right? And as far as Laura, we don't need to decide this tonight for our taxes going forward. I know everybody wants a decision tonight, but you don't need to make a decision in order to have it be not the best decision for the town. So I think that we need to, I am interested, Susan, in some type of a compromise, whether it's having the work to go to the State House and try to find the best way to get small business relief, exemption. The 5 businesses that Laura read off, I'm not interested in helping them. I'm interested in helping our local shops, our local businesses, but we need to define what that is, and then we need to define how we can best help them to create their businesses and get them, going and growing more. Pat, I know it's not what you want to hear, but I'm sorry, that's how I feel about it. If we really want to help the small businesses, let's develop a plan that's going to just do that, not overall blanket and have that extra tax burden come back on the town residents.
Thank you. Anybody else on the council want to say anything else
Yeah.
anymore?
All right, let's go over this one more time. In Washington County, Narragansett is the only town with a 2-tier tax that charges commercial properties 150% higher over the residential rate, out of 9 communities. Back in 2003, our revenue was 12% from commercial properties. Today, it's 8%. Obviously, this policy is not working, all right? Our stores up in Stop and Shop there are vacant. You know, lowering the property tax, commercial rate will bring in some more businesses, okay? We just had, what's the pet store that just left? They just left. Okay, Critter Hut just left. We don't have the demographics. Half our demographics is in the Atlantic Ocean, okay? Fish don't buy groceries. They don't go walk into stores and purchase stuff. That's why some businesses go to Wakefield, because they have, you draw a circle around, they have demographics. We don't have the demographics. And Harry, I know you're having a good time back there, but you know, this is really disappointing, and this is why Rhode Island is a failed state, because of progressive ideas who are anti-business. And I've, you know, I'm very sad to see that Narragansett is moving in the same direction as the rest of Rhode Island. Very sad.
Anybody else from the public wishing to speak? Meg?
Good evening. Margaret Rogers, 68 Earls Court.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening. You've heard it all before, so I won't belabor the point, but I do have a question. Does this benefit the commercial fishing industry, and does it benefit a commercial fisherman, a guy that has a boat in Galilee? Because I received a telephone call the night after the single rate was repealed about a certain councilwoman who wanted to do something to benefit the commercial fishing industry. This is your opportunity to do that. I've seen nothing come forward from anybody here except the sponsors of this motion to help anyone in the commercial fishing industry. And someday we'll all go to Galilee and we'll visit the museum. We'll show our grandchildren, this is where the boats used to be. And I want to applaud Council Moretti, because he listened and he realized that leadership is compromise. You go to the middle ground, you work really hard to get there, and that's the essence of leadership. My husband and I chose to come to the state from Boston, from the Boston area. This state is the worst state in America in which to do business. It can't get any worse. This is an opportunity for our town to realize that the people that employed my daughter at Aunt Carrie's, who gave her a job when I moved here, I didn't know those people, they're a legacy business in our community. And yet, I as a taxpayer can't ask those people to pay 50% more in property taxes than my husband and I do. And yet they hired my daughter. It's unfair. So I applaud your efforts here. I hope you pass this and really think about what this will do for the commercial fishermen. Here's your opportunity. And by the way, Matt, I know you testified for the homestead, and I applaud you for that. You did not vote for it. You did not vote for the homestead. So actions matter, words don't. Thank you.
That's fine, Meg. I think everyone understood that I wanted a different definition of the homestead locally. I think everyone understands exactly my passion for the homestead. And the red herrings, let's end them. South County? Okay. South County, we are, okay, lower than South Kingston. Our commercial rate is lower than South Kingstown's, lower than North Kingstown. The sponsors of this never tell you that. Lower than, yeah, well, yes it is. No, it's not. Okay, fine.
It's not lower than North Kingston.
Yes, it is.
Like
it's the behind South Kingston. So if you want to show the numbers that I'm incorrect, I may be working off of last year's numbers if those have changed.
I thought we had a done deal up here, but obviously, again, we're disappointing the business community in Narragansett, and it's very sad. These people out there have 2 months to get it right, If they get a shot of bad weather, some of these businesses, I know one guy selling his.
It's not anti-business, Patrick, to be the 7th best commercial rate in the state out of 39 cities and towns. It's the 7th
worst
best.
state to do business in the country.
Right, but to say it's anti-business compared to similar communities is a red herring. So we've got to stop with those arguments. You just have to look at the numbers. Number 7, it's number 7 best, and for residents, it's number 4. Those are the facts. Yes, you guys are upset that there's a distinction between the two. We're trying to come to a compromise. I put forward the idea for a compromise, but in the end, let's look at the facts. It's not anti-business when your neighbors have a higher business tax rate than you.
That's not true. Listen, if Narragansett wants to follow the failed policies of Providence and Woonsocket, then so be it, I guess. You just roll up the carpet, tell the businesses, we don't need you here.
Anybody else wishing to speak? If you've anybody new that's wishing to speak? No, sorry. No, sorry. Okay, so do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move that. I'll do anything to close this.
Do we have a motion to close the public hearing? Second.
Second.
All those in favor of closing?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Okay, moving on the agenda, we were going back to number 10 on new business to allow the Narragansett Education Foundation, a nonprofit 501c, to host a warming tent during the Festival of Lights event December 3rd, 2017 at the Memorial Park. So, more discussion. Meg? We're on motion 10 for new business.
Good evening. I share Councilwoman Lawler's concern over this. I applaud the Education Alliance. It's a lovely idea to offer a place for families to warm up to coming to our tree lighting ceremony. Yet it seems very irresponsible to bring alcohol into the mix at this type of child and family-centered event. Having been at the towers the last few years, Santa comes at 3 o'clock. So, I mean, they're going to serve booze from 3:30 till 5 o'clock, 5:30, 2 hours. So you visit Santa, and then you can't take your children in the tent. I don't understand it. I was very taken aback to see that a group that does such good work in our town and is so identified as part of our educational support system would propose serving alcohol at a tree lighting event. Part of their philosophy that they take great pride in is enhancing the social fabric of our community. And I hope the NEF sought the advice and counsel of the Prevention Partnership on this. I'd love to hear what they think about it, because one of their most resounding messages that the Prevention Partnership has been raising awareness on is that achieving population level reductions in alcohol misuse among our youth and adults is a community-wide effort, and we all have to be active stakeholders in that. And you've all devoted tremendous amount of hours of your time to listen to to help eradicate the turmoil that we've seen bring suffering on our town from the overuse of alcohol by some in our student population. So I believe it's very, very important for us as a community to set the proper example and show that we can all celebrate the lighting and welcome the holidays into our town without involving booze. And I ask the council to please approve this request, but to deny the use of any alcohol as it sends the improper message to our youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Phil?
Thank you, Phil Capaldi, President of the Narragansett Education Foundation. We understand on the surface what it may look like. We know, having participated in the tree lighting as a family ourselves, waiting for the trolleys, going on the hay rides, it can be a cold event, no doubt. So we, at the foundation, we're really trying to target an area where we could address the families and where the families would be. Families aren't at the blessing of the fleet. Kids aren't really going to be hanging around that function. We're just talking about a small tent. Families are welcome to come into the tent. It's not exclusive for that. We have a tip certified person that would be serving a cordial, and then they would move on. So we understand the concern, but we know that something new can be a little bit intimidating. In the past, we jumped into raising funds pulling from a larger audience. So we hosted a 2-day professional conference for educators for across the state here at the high school. We had 558 attendees, and that was money that went into the Ed Foundation as well. We're really just trying to capitalize on the captive audience. 3 to 6, that's totally fine. And again, we understand the concern, but we see this as not something that is outside of the norm of a high-end fundraising event that serves, you know, a cocktail to the people that buy a ticket to it. I disagree that it is one family, that is exclusive to the families. So I think it complements nicely the events. So I hope you take that into consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. Anybody else wishing to speak on the Warm Ted at the Festival of Lights? Okay, so it looks like if there's an amendment to the 3 to 6, maybe we could.
I actually have a question. Did 10 and 11 work together?
Well, yeah, so if 10 happens, then 11, they need the liquor license, right? Yes. Yeah, if you approve 10, then you have to go with 11, right? They're connected,
And why is that?
because you need a license.
Because number 10 includes the alcohol? I guess that's my question. Can you have a tent without alcohol?
Yeah, 10 is meaning for alcohol, that's why 11 is there.
So what Matt's saying is
Right,
that
the blue sheet says it, but the motion doesn't. It's a weird, yeah.
do we have the option to approve the tent and say we'd like to have them be a part of it? Because you're correct, it'd be a great avenue for people to learn about it. But do we have the ability then to say no to the alcohol portion? Yes.
So then they don't work together. You could vote yes on 10 and no on 11.
But the motion. Yeah, so 10 is reading that it would be alcohol, though. So just for clarification, 10 is including alcohol.
No, 10 just says warming, and that's what threw me off, because I thought they had heating lamps in there.
I think 10 is the tent and 11 is the alcohol. So you can approve, if you don't approve the tent, then there's no
Then
issue.
10, then 11's off
And
the
11's
table.
out. But you can vote yes on 10, no on 11, or any
Oh,
variation
okay, I
thereof.
see what you're saying. So you want just the 10, but if your intent is to say yes to the alcohol, you do 10 and 11 yes. Okay, so what's the pleasure of the council before we vote on this? Because it was the intent.
What is the motion now on the table?
Well, number 10 is
That's
to
the motion
allow
to, yeah.
the foundation, the nonprofit, to have the warming tent. So you can vote for a warming tent. The question is, you know, do you want alcohol served in the warming tent? So we can all say yes to the tent for 10.
Pat hasn't spoken yet. You haven't spoken yet.
Well, he did it before about it.
I got a question for Chris. If you don't get the alcohol, will the tent still be open? It wouldn't make any sense?
So if we,
It wouldn't be feasible. Right.
they want to make money.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Right.
Right. So if you're not thinking that you're going to support 11, then you wouldn't support 10 in reality. Okay, so the motion's on the floor for 10 for the warming tent. All those in favor?
Aye. Yes, aye.
No.
No.
3 to 2, motion passes. Okay, and number 11, a motion to approve a Class F1 alcohol beverage license for the Narragansett Education Foundation.
Wait, let's talk about this one again here.
Well, let me read the motion first. For December 3rd, 2017, at Veterans Memorial Park, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to state and local regulations, and waive the fee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Go ahead, Patrick.
Chris, why don't you come up here again, if you would? Sorry. I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to capitalize on an event. Now, if you talked about hours previously, 3 o'clock to 5:30, that's not going to get it either, right?
No, not with the insurances that we're
Right.
paying and the police
Right.
details, which come in 2-hour segments.
Right. So I don't know if I can support alcohol either, okay? I don't mind you having a tent, but is there any way you can like have cocoa or something?
Well, the
The
Lions
Lions
has the
Club
cocoa.
supplies.
Lion Club
How
supply.
about
And
sell
we're
the
really-
T-shirts like Sue Bush had? Those are beautiful T-shirts for $10.
Well, I really didn't want to create a giant issue out of this.
Right.
We're an ed foundation, and like all other ed foundations in the state, with endowments 5 to 7 times larger than what we have,
Right.
this is the way that they raise funds. This is how they do
Right.
it. They attract the parents and the large donors. You can look across the state, this is how they do it. So all we tried to do was bring that to Narragansett. Narragansett right now does not have a well-funded public education foundation. That's
Right.
what we're trying to
So
do.
I'm not opposed to either motion. And logistically speaking, are you advertising that this is part of the tree lighting? Is this just happens to be on the same night, or are you co-marketing this?
No, we're not a part of.
All right, so you're not a part of it, just happens to be on town property, you're going about business the way you're supposed to, you happen to be off in a corner of another piece of town property, and you're not saying to, hey, come to the tree lighting, and you have pamphlets that promote both of your event, like our event and your event, there's no commingling of the message?
We have not sent out any message pending this vote. and
Because you
I-
could theoretically rent the towers for that night, or you could have theoretically rented another parcel somewhere else in town.
yes.
It just happens to be you're trying to
Correct.
benefit from the captive audience.
Excellent, thank you. And I do want to bring this up too. I mean, this is really our first attempt to
Right, sure.
blend the Education Foundation with town
Town.
events. But I
Sure.
can tell you that in order for us to raise the funds necessary
Right.
for the Ed Foundation, we need to do this in the future.
Well, after tonight's,
Regularly.
after tonight's future vote, I don't think the business community is going to be behind you. So, with that said.
Might be easy to go back to taxes, but anyway, no, let's finish this.
The hours, let's go back to hours.
Yes.
Our hours, what hours are you going to need here, do you think, do you feel?
Okay, well, again, this is a new event. It is unadvertised. There's going to be a tent that looks like a MASH hospital tent near the towers.
Yeah.
It is completely enclosed. You cannot see inside. You have to go inside to see. We're going to have a sign outside on a 4x8 sheet of plywood, which one of our students in high school, our art student, is going to decorate for us that says, the Narragansett Education Foundation warming tent, adult beverages served.
Right.
Now, you could bring your children in there if you'd like, and they could sit around. We're not going to serve children. We have tip-certified bartenders in there. We have a police detail out there, which I can assure you is not going to allow this to happen.
Right.
And as I mentioned to you, we are trying to bring this into the town fold.
Right.
We don't want to sit outside, and we certainly don't want to, get the ire up of the residents and the
Right.
town council
Right.
about trying to raise money for the Ed
No,
Foundation.
mine's already up, so you don't have to worry about that. You missed that.
So this is I'm sorry that this is taking the turn that it has, but from my perspective as treasurer, I'm trying to maximize the amount
Sure.
of funds that we can raise
Right.
and have a good event that people talk about afterwards. So if I could be open for the event duration,
That'd
to
be,
me,
that'd be
that
what,
gives me-
3 o'clock?
That gives me the best chance to maximize my funds.
So what's the start time?
What kind, start
So
at 3?
I could start at 12, I could start at 1. This tent goes up and it stays up until the fireworks go out and then it comes down.
Right. So how late would you propose?
As soon as the fireworks are done and the
5:30,
event is
6
over,
o'clock.
we're done. We're done. We're finished. We're folding up.
Okay, so when are the fireworks? They're 5?
The lighting of the trees at 5, and it usually ends about 5:30. So would 1 or 2
1
be?
to 6?
1 to 6?
1 to 6, yeah. We would go for 1 to 6.
Okay,
All right,
so.
I just got a
thank-
couple more questions here.
Yes.
I'll be chasing them off now.
No.
I chased off my thing, my tax rate thing. What kind of alcohol you serve? Is it just beer? Is it drinks? Is it?
So it's donated beer from, who's donating? Whalers Brewery is
Whalers.
donating.
So is it beer and wine then?
Beer, there will be some wine. Sons of Liberty, who are residents in this town, are also donating whiskey and cider. And
Right.
we will have Bailey's and coffee available as well.
Okay.
Now, we don't expect everybody to run the gambit there. We expect, social drinking, and that's
Well,
normally what we get at these events.
Right. All right. So I don't know.
It just feels like an alteration, Chris, of this event. And I think I'd be glad to sit with you guys to brainstorm other types of events. I've seen things in South Kingston where they do, there could be other avenues. I'm even thinking out loud, even calamari cook-off would be a better fit for this. There is the chaos of the blessing of the fleet, but the fit is tough. That's why we're not trying to be difficult here. It's just.
Yeah, please don't take it as that. It doesn't just feel right to an event that we've had.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I don't know that the Parks Director's comfortable with it. He said give it a trial. I think 1 to 6, it's an event. Let's give it I'm for it.
we'll try it too. because-
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Oh, sure.
All right, we're gonna vote on it. We've talked about it, we've heard from the public. All those in favor of 11, motion 11, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion passes 3 to 2. Good luck, and I trust you'll be very responsible with the event, with the Narragansett Police Chief as well, and the department.
Yeah, I'll be there.
And I'll be there as well.
You'll be
Make
kicking me
sure-
out. You'll be kicking me out.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to old business, number 9, a motion to authorize the elimination of the extra non-resident parking pass for all South Pavilion non-resident lease packages and restrict parking for the non-resident South Pavilion leases to the south lot only. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Steve, can you come on up and just
I have a few questions.
so I want you to come up just to clarify and review this, because there are 3 motions, so we're going to take them separate and clear to make sure that the council and the public clearly understands each individual motion, because we did struggle the last time. So this one is that non-residents parking pass for all South Pavilion packages and non-residents be eliminated.
And Susan, I also have one that I've thought of the last week that I want to bring forward.
Okay, so Steve, you want to just,
Okay, good evening. So just to make it a little bit easier, Michelle and I put these screens together, so just to kind of give you an idea on what the 2018 non-resident South Pavilion locker policy would be if it was approved tonight. So if approved, the existing non-resident leasing a South Pavilion locker will be allowed to continue leasing lockers with the following conditions. Be one parking pass with 4 facility passes, which are photo IDs. 2 may be transferable passes, no picture. So you could switch out 2 for transferable passes. The non-resident leasee will be required to park in the south lot. And 2018 seasonal parking passes will have the following designation. So we'd have the parking pass NRS. The fee is $600, and in the future we would eliminate all resident taxpayers will be allowed to lease lockers at the South Pavilion, thus eliminating the non-resident South Pavilion waiting list. So that clarifies that package moving forward if it was approved. So that's the compromise, as we discussed 2 weeks ago, allowing the 103 non-residents to stay in the South Pavilion, but it basically eliminates the second additional parking pass and but also restricts them to parking in the south lot.
so,
Go ahead.
are you sure?
I'm not sure, but go ahead.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
So, non-residents that have a locker now can continue to have a locker.
That's correct.
The future people that have been on
Cannot.
a waiting list no longer have the option to get a locker.
That's correct. Non-residents.
Non-residents. They lose, the people that have a locker that will renew lose one parking pass.
It's typically a non-resident parking pass.
Sorry, I'll keep saying. So the two non-resident parking passes that they used to get, now they're down to one.
That's correct.
And they have to park in whatever
In the
lot
south
indicated.
lot, that's
Is
correct.
that fee, has that always been 600?
It is, but the additional non-resident parking pass would be an extra $100. So that if you've got the two parking passes, it would be $700.
So when's the last time you raised that? I'm just curious.
I'm not sure. It hasn't been raised in a number of years.
Okay, all right.
So he just reviewed what I said, the 103, the people that are there, they stay there, but from here on in, no new members for the South Pavilion, correct? One pass, not two, so we're gonna open up spots, and they have to only park in the south, not in the north, that's where they can go.
And a question came up, obviously, Michelle and myself have been getting, our office gets emails. Question came up if south lot is filled, which it does on busy days like all of our lots, then people with the NRS could park in the west lot, but not in the north lot, even on busy days.
Okay, and no more waiting lists so if you're a non-resident from here on in, you can't get a locker or pass there, so the waiting list goes away?
Well, basically, we haven't been working off the non-resident list. Even though we've been keeping it, we have not been working off the non-resident list. Right now, we have 61 residents on the waiting list for our South Pavilion. Right. I know we said 50, but Michelle's been getting them in for the last couple of weeks.
And just to be clear, the lot that the non-residents will park in, if they have a locker, is the north lot, no, the south lot, which is what what I call the surfer lot?
Yes. Yeah.
So the surfer lot is for non-residents with passes, the north lot is restricted to residents.
Well, when we get there, we can talk about that.
Just want to make sure,
Okay.
got it. And my nomenclature.
I wanted to toss another one out there. That number 103 for non-residents, I know I was shocked. I think there were many people that were shocked that many non-residents had locker spaces in the South Pavilion. You just said that there are 61 Narragansett residents on the waiting list for a South Pavilion locker.
That's correct.
I want to throw out another idea for us to consider that's really resident focused. I mean, that's the thing that we heard clearly during all the beach workshops, that yes, we do want to have non-residents use our beaches, but the taxpayers pay for the tax burden on the beach, and we wanted to bring it back to being a resident beach with people coming as well. So if we subtract that 61 from 103, what if we were to, Steve, do something on the basis of if we gave a period of time, maybe January 1, that residents would have until January 1, 2018 to actually apply for one of the available lockers, at which time, if there are remaining lockers open, we could have a lottery system with the current South Pavilion non-resident locker owners, and they could take possession at that point. What this will do is for me, for the residents of the town, if there's any property owner in town that wishes to have a locker, I believe we need to give them that option before we can go ahead and grandfather in any of the non-residents. But it will also make sure then that we do not have any lockers that are not rented out. So if residents or property owners in town by January 1st of 2018 do not seek to be able to have one of the remaining lockers, then have a lottery for the non-residents who can then take over those lockers. Just another idea that's more resident focused.
So I think we did hear that many people that came to the workshops wanted us to be residential friendly, and I think that we did, and I think a lot of the recommendations that came out of the workshop sort of tilted towards the residents, and we looked at the the juvenile passes or the non-seasonal youth passes, and we did a lot of things. I think we listened to the people, but as far as this, the people that came up, those 103, we had a lot of people that lived in the town, left, have returned, live in South Kingston, that are our neighbors and our friends, and I think this compromise still gives the opportunity for the residents to have it, but we're a neighbor, we're friendly with our neighbors, and it's not a private beach. So I thought that this motion was a compromise from everything we took, so I'm satisfied. I feel badly. I think once that 103 goes, then we should no longer do lockers or beach car passes or anything to non-residents, but the ones that are there, that have been there 30, 40, 50 years, generations, I think it's hard to, at this point, and a lot of them that spoke grew up in Narragansett, or worked in Narragansett or have contributed, so I feel very comfortable with this compromise on the table tonight.
But that's what I think the transferable pass, we did a great job with the transferable pass, because that fits in right to that population, where if you have friends from South Kingston that come, you can buy the non-transferable passes and they can come in. But with this, I mean, it's either you're a taxpayer of the town or you're not. I don't think that anyone, we had a wonderful group of ladies that came last time to speak to us, but I don't think that if we went to Warwick or Cranston or any of the other towns in the state of Rhode Island and asked for the same rights as their property owners, that we get them.
Anybody else wishing to speak on the beach? Anybody else wishing to speak on this?
I do want to just say one thing, and it's not for tonight. I'm not amending the motion whatsoever, but I think you really need to take a look at the $600 fee. And I can tell you flat out, coming from, living somewhere else for 23 years and coming back, it's, that's a bargain, right? So I'm not suggesting that I want to really, it just needs to be looked at. It's a real, it's a bargain. So.
I just had a couple of quick questions. By eliminating one parking pass, how many parking spaces do you anticipate this summer?
Well, that
additional, free.
In the statistics that we used in the last in the workshop and 2 weeks ago, that frees up about 89 parking spaces.
All right, 90 spots. Okay. Okay. So basically, through attrition, you figure people with 102 non-residents will drop off and have the residents fill in the, overtime, right?
Well, that's the
plan,
eventual
right?
plan. That's correct.
Do you have any predictions on how long that would take place? I mean,
well, we work off our list, and so we went through 14 lockers last year at the South Pavilion.
Okay.
So, but
all right. Well, that's
changes
good.
from
That's
year
good.
to year.
Yeah. All right. Well, say if you average 10, then you're talking 10 years to have a turnaround. Now, can the person who owns that, the non-resident who owns that locker,
leases?
The what?
Leases.
Leases. All right. So leases the locker.
Sorry for the correction.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So John Smith, who owns that locker, leases the locker, right? Can he turn around and say he's ill and he goes toes up? Can he turn around and give it to his brother?
No. It's a primary. Okay. The primary is listed, and you cannot. That's one of the things
right.
that was prevented many years ago. You cannot hand that down to generations.
Right. Not like Canachet up there. No. Yeah. Okay. All right. Through attrition, it's gonna thin out. I feel for some of these people. They've been here for many years, and all of a sudden, we're going to boot them out next year. I don't know. I said go after 5 in the last meeting. I got a bunch of emails on that one. So, yeah, let's
call it to a vote?
Yeah, let's call it to the vote.
Oh.
I think we got some folks that want to speak here.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Michelle. Anybody wishing to speak on the motion number 9? Joan?
Joan Mulligan, 59 Bow Run, Narragansett. First of all, a bright spot. I love my taxes. I'm happy to pay them. I moved to Narragansett, and I've discussed this before other sitting town councils, when they were trying to run the deep water wind cable under the beach. I said I moved here from Boston for Narragansett Town Beach. I have 3 siblings. They all live on Cape Cod, and I live in Narragansett, Rhode Island, because they're boaters, and I'm a beach beauty. I like to lie on the beach.
You do.
I do, and you know that, Susan.
Because you're there all day.
I'm there.
I know.
Consider it I'm retired. This is my new full-time job.
You're good at it.
So here's the deal. I did some numbers, conservative numbers, from Steve's presentation. The north and south lot has 698 parking spaces total. I don't have the numbers for the north pavilion because those people are, whatever, not brought up. Steve said he sold an additional 370 parking passes. I guess those are the ones that you can buy in addition to your passes you get with your package when you rent both the changing rooms in the north and the lockers in the south. And the south has 203. So that is a total of 500, and that's conservative because I don't have the numbers on the North Pavilion. That's 582 parking passes owned by non-residents with a parking capacity of 698 spaces. That's like 85%. I was shut out of the beach parking lot 4 times last summer, and my friends who are all residents were shut out a lot of times too. I'd say probably totaling 12 or 13 times. I moved to Narragansett and I paid the taxes and I support the high school football team by buying the restaurant discount cards, and the Boy Scouts got a big box of food from me a couple of weeks ago, and I'm here and I get shut out of the beach because 582 passes are given out to non-residents. It makes the top of my head want to blow off. I don't understand this. This is a Narragansett town beach. There are 3 other beaches in this town, state beaches, but there are 3. A lot of people who come to this beach have their own town beaches, which I'm not allowed to go to. I think you are the Narragansett Town Council. You are empowered to look out for the benefits of the residents, and when it comes to the rights of the town residents versus the desires of the non-residents, what's the decision? Seriously, what's the decision?
Thank you,
People
Joan.
talk about, you know, family.
Your 3 minutes are up. I do want to respond to the difficulty getting on the beach because I was there as much as you this summer. And Steve does have the statistics. Almost every day you could get on the beach other than those sunny Sundays where you had to wait. Sometimes I would even not get on the beach after church. But for the most part, it was a very small amount of time on a Sunday for a short period of time. And he has the statistics on that because I know because I was in the parking lot with him. And so most every day, all summer long, Monday even through Saturday, it was a non-issue. It was busy, nice Sundays. And so I'm just throwing that out because you did mention that. There were many times that people can get on there. That was the tough time on the Sunday. So I just want to bring that up.
Well, you know, you set your alarm on a Sunday or a Saturday to get to the beach.
You got to get there early. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Good evening.
Hi. If you state your name and address.
Michael Correa. I'm from 47 Lillian Court.
Can you tip the microphone in? There you go.
From the city of Warwick.
From Warwick.
I'd like to thank everybody in the town who allow us to come to the town and enjoy this wonderful beach. I don't strain services. I come to the beach. I enjoy the beach. I'm respectful. I have 3 grown boys. They're surfers. I'm a surfer. I've bought 3 boards from David Levy. I've bought numerous boards from Peter Pan up in town. We spend money in town. We don't leave a big footprint on the beach. We're very respectful of the ocean. And I appreciate the compromise. And I just, I hope that you allow us to stay. We enjoy the beach as much as you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Hi, my name is Michael Coleman. I live on 16 Elm Street, North Kingstown. I've been on I've had a lease for the locker for probably about 5 years now. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty close. But I think I got on the list in about '95, so it took me that long to get a pass to get there. And the only reason I got it is because it became available because there were no town residents that wanted it. I think that was the case. So to sit there and say I hadn't paid my dues to get to this point, or to start to take some of these privileges away, times are good right now, so everybody wants to go to the beach. I get it. But I paid my dues and waited in line, and if that thing never came, if those leases never came available, I'd still be on the out-of-town waiting list, waiting my turn, which we did. So one of my concerns is with the south lot, if that becomes full, we have to go to the west lot. Is that right? Okay, now are we going to form a line at the west lot to pull in? Because we have in the past formed a line to get into the north lot or the south lot, and is that going to be an issue on that side to get in line?
I mean, it very well could be.
Well, that's kind of
Right?
what I needed to
Yeah.
address, because I don't need to come up. Honestly, I work 6 days a week. I do enjoy a Sunday, and yes, I get in line with, because that's just the way it is. But other family members that can appreciate other days, but I can't. So I do go on a Sunday, and that is going to become a problem for me. So I just wanted to make sure somebody will accommodate us.
Well, if the lot's full, you're out of luck. So if the south is full and you try to get in the west, it's full, then you're going to have to figure out, I mean, yeah, then
Well,
that
there's
might be
no
a day
line-
you go
then
to the
there's no
state
line
beach.
Then I can wait in line somewhere to get in either one of the lots?
No, you can't, because you can't be sitting out on the street either.
See, and that's the thing. And by the way, when I did sign up, it was $400, and I think about 4 years ago, it did go up to $600, so we are paying a pretty good amount of money. For the amount of times that I go, maybe about 8 times a year, and then to be denied, it's just,
And you live in North Kingston, so we're trying to find a compromise.
I get it.
We have the residents here that pay taxes. I appreciate what you're
I
saying,
do,
but
and I
I think
appreciate
you
what you're saying.
are getting a little carried away and remember what we're trying to do here in the town.
and I fully appreciate that.
Okay,
And the
just
thing is
reminding
that
you.
It was set in motion, and I waited
That-
my turn, so, and
we
I do,
appreciate
and-
that,
and
sir.
we're trying to compromise back also.
Thank you.
All right.
Come on up. No. I
My
know.
name's Tom Quinn, and I actually was born...
Your address, Tom?
How are you doing?
Yeah, your address.
I just want to thank
Yeah,
you all.
Tom, where do you live?
I'm sorry?
Where do you live?
I live in North Kingstown right now.
Thank you.
I was born and raised in Narragansett, though, and been on the beach for, well, about 60 years. I want to thank you all for what you've done. It's a very contentious situation right now, and I think you've reached an amicable compromise on this thing. It is not easy for people who've been coming to the beach for all the years that I've been coming, and other people who have these lockers, to face the possibility that our summers are going to change as dramatically as they would if we didn't come to this beach. On the other hand, I realize that the town is changing, that people, and there has certainly been an overcrowding on Sunday, particularly on this beach. In fact, I don't go anymore on Sundays because of that. But
We're encouraging the non-residents to take Sundays off.
I know that. The compromise you reached is one that I think actually is one that fulfills both of your duties. You've allocated more parking spaces to residents. You've used an attrition formula to allow more parking spaces and passes for new residents or residents who might want to come on in the future. And you've also fulfilled your obligation in terms of raising revenue for the town. If you had left all of us out, the chances were that you would have lost about $60,000 or thereabouts. You've, in essence, you fulfilled all of your obligations with this compromise, and I think that the people in this room should recognize that, and thank you very much for what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else wishing to speak? The woman in behind, Stanley. I don't know. State your name and address, please.
Kim Plant, 235 Narragansett Ave, East Wakefield. My question or comments are for 9B, the actual admission passes.
So we're not on 9B, we're on the other motion, so.
We can't address that.
9A, we're speaking to.
So I should wait.
Yeah, when you, thank you for being so diligent in making sure it's the right time. Thank you, yeah. We're on 9A. Mrs. Warner.
Good evening, Jane Warren, 26 Jakes Way, Narragansett. I just want to remind the town council, we cannot go to North Kingstown Town Beach, to the Wickford Town Beach, because we're not residents there. Yet they come here and ask for consideration by the town council, and I don't think it's deserving. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Stanley.
Councilman Moretti, I think you hit the nail on the head how to fix this problem. Again, justice for all. We don't discriminate in town, out of town, all that stuff. Don't discriminate. The only way to discriminate is cost. You got 61 on a waiting list. Obviously, the beach fees are too low. If you got 61 waiting list, you're not charging enough, and you haven't raised it in the last few years, that's not appropriate. Financially, it's not appropriate. At this time, I suggest that you go at least $900, and that gets rid of your list, and that may get rid of the people that in town or out of town, and you'll be, because I know the beach fees are not as much as last year. I heard
Price them
that.
out of town.
I think the beach fees are less than they were last year, so we've got a shortcoming a little bit here in our actions. So the only way to fix it, we have to pay attention to finance. And, you know, all this other issues can be solved with the equality for all. Everybody gets the chance to do it, but they get a chance to do it at $900 and then see what kind of waiting list and who comes from out of town. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad we agree on something, Stanley.
Anybody else wishing to speak on this motion? And before we vote on it too, one of the things that we talked about in the workshop, you know, that was a big problem was, you know, the juveniles that were coming, the youth that were drinking. I think a lot of the people that spoke or have come to the meetings, you know, that have held a locker in the South have been neighbors and friends and part of the community, and I think it is a good compromise. I mean, we think of the residents first, but I see people that grew up in Narragansett that I went to high school with that are returns or still using the beach, and again, we want to balance that. All the decisions that we've made is to balance the residents with the visitors, and we've tried to be thoughtful in that. We've tried to make sure the residents come first, the taxpayers come first, but that we're open to the visitors because they do help stimulate the economy. They do spend money, they buy surfboards and so on. So I think by attrition, I think it's a good compromise. I think for saying here on, we're not going to allow anybody else to come in, finish this cycle out, and they're done. And I think it's a fair compromise. So I hope the council feels like it was a compromise. I know we listen to a lot of people, and I know people are passionate about the beach, and they get emotional, and we'd like it for all of us to have, but it's important that we have our neighbors and friends visit it because it does generate the revenue. So at this point, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
No.
Those opposed?
No.
4-1, the motion passes. Okay. Motion, now we're on motion 9B. A motion to authorize the elimination of one additional non-resident parking pass and non-resident admission passes for all new leases in the North Pavilion resident taxpayer changing room packages and South Pavilion locker resident taxpayer packages. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion. Steve, can you walk us through 9B?
Okay, so basically what this is doing, and we have a slide. For the South and North Pavilion is we're suggesting that existing locker policy for the South Pavilion and for the changing rooms in the North Pavilion, those packages are going to stay the same from 2017. Anyone leasing lockers in the South Pavilion and changing rooms in the North Pavilion, those packages will stay the same. So if you are partnering or sharing with non-residents in the North Pavilion from 2017 and earlier, with non-residents, so you get that additional parking pass in the North Pavilion, and in the South Pavilion, you're sharing with a non-resident, you will be able to be grandfathered in perpetuity, and you can also change those non-residents out. You get all that? So that's where we want to honor that. We want to honor that. We want to honor that relationship from 2017 earlier. We can do that with our records. The only caveat to that is still anyone in the South Pavilion that's a non-resident will get a non-resident pass to park in the South Pavilion. So we have those records, we'll be able to do that. I want to make that clear, that's how these packages will look. However, moving forward, when a locker becomes available in the South Pavilion or a changing room becomes available in the North Pavilion and it's brand new, so we're changing the primary resident taxpayer, they will not be able to partner with a non-resident. So as you said earlier, Councilwoman, we're going to continue to move forward with not having any non-residents. So we're going to honor existing relationships with non-residents in perpetuity as these relationships continue, and then as they start to wind down, then we'll move those into pure resident relationships. And that will help the parking situations as the years move on.
So I have a question. Go ahead.
You go first, Mike.
So the way I'm reading this is so going forward, 2018 resident taxpayers can actually take a parking pass and give it to a non-resident.
No, if you're leasing now from the beach.
Did I just see that and it's gone now? Is it a different slide?
That was the existing.
Oh, so the existing. So existing 2017 residents that have whatever they have, they now can take a pass and give it to a non-resident.
Well, part of their packages is they get 4 passes and a parking pass for themselves.
Right.
And they get to purchase an additional parking pass and 2 adult passes. That was always set aside for their non-resident relatives or guests that they can partner with or share that changing room with. And so what we're saying is that can continue in perpetuity.
So we don't know, like, if they're going to just sell that parking pass to somebody else, right? It's just, I mean, does that? I mean, I'm just asking because I wasn't. Does it defeat the purpose of eliminating a non-resident parking pass from before?
Are those relationships going on today? Absolutely. We don't know if they're selling them, but for the most part, what we hear are there are a lot of folks that have brothers, sisters, or good friends that have been sharing those lockers or changing rooms for many, many years. We certainly don't want to break that relationship.
They want to go with their family members, right?
Yeah.
Steve, did something change, though? I thought from the last meeting we were at that if you had someone who was a non-resident sharing, that if that person, let's say, moved to California, you couldn't sub them out for another non-resident. But I think I just heard you say something different in the North Pavilion.
No, but I mean, if they can change their guest non-resident, but if the primary resident taxpayer decides not to lease that locker anymore, that's when it would completely change.
So they can swap out that secondary at any time as long as they're the current Narragansett resident as it leading, okay?
Yeah, it's the primary only.
Yeah, so you have to be the primary person. as a
Exactly.
resident. And so you can give it to your mother, your aunt, your cousin.
And you cannot hand that changing room down to generation to
That's
generation.
right.
So it's one primary. And we have very good records about that, and Michelle is prepared to be able to, continue. I mean, it's work, but we can continue to do that. We think that's a good way of being able to bridge that into the new policies that we have if they're approved tonight. We think it's a good compromise, so we don't disrupt the relationships that people have had for many, many years, just like you've done with that last, people have had these relationships for a long time with with their either relatives or friends that may be from out of town.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions for Steve? Okay, anybody from the public? Well, you have to come up to the podium, Mary. State your name and your address.
Mary Wojciechowski, Narragansett. We don't go to the beach, but what is this definition of a resident? They have to be a taxpayer, or what if it's a tenant? They have to show their lease or an ID? No. Yeah.
It's a different.
So a resident taxpayer is obviously a resident, and they can prove their residency.
What if it's a tenant? Or what if it is a tenant?
A tenant, they have to show a 12-month lease.
Okay.
And they also have to be registered with the town. That building, that property has to be registered as a rental. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, because we can go for free, senior citizens.
Right, but
we
you
don't
said
go.
you don't go to the beach,
No,
Mary.
we don't have time.
Anybody else wishing to speak on the motion? Oh, this is the one you waited for. Come on up. That's right. The floor is all yours. Your name and address.
Kim Plant, 235 Narragansett Ave, East Wakefield. There is some confusion here because I don't see the language in what I am looking for, which is the actual out-of-town season passes.
We eliminated those.
I called the town hall, and they told me that this was all to stop that. And I live a mile from the beach. So I don't know exactly what's going on here with the actual season pass. We walk and ride our bike to the beach, so parking's not an issue, lockers are not an issue.
Okay,
So
thank you.
well, but I have I don't know the answer to that question. So did we eliminate?
We have an answer.
We answered that?
Yeah, we eliminated it.
So you eliminated out-of-town season passes?
Right.
Yes.
Well, we have a transferable pass,
Yeah.
right? Steve?
So we already eliminated that.
Maybe you
though.
can expand on that, Steve.
That was eliminated, at the last town meeting, we eliminated that.
I
Now,
found out about this too late,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Thank you, sorry.
Well, the
Steve.
transferable pass, correct me if I'm wrong, Miss, do you have a friend that lives in Narragansett?
Oh, Steve.
On Ocean Road.
Right? Am I wrong, Steve, with the transferable
Well,
pass?
just explain the transferable pass, just explain it, that's all.
So the explanation on the transferable passes, if you are a resident taxpayer, the transferable passes 2 weeks ago were reduced from $100 to $75. And that was the ability, to afford the ability for folks that were residents who have adult children that live out of town, that came into town, so they could purchase a $75 transferable pass with no picture ID and be able to transfer that pass to other adult children or friends for the summer. There is a question, and this is something that we're going to monitor. If we find out they're being abused, meaning that we find out there are people coming and purchasing excess amount of those passes, then we're prepared to come before the council as soon as the season begins to put a cap on that. We've never had that issue in the past, but we have certainly heightened our awareness to that concern, and we will be prepared to react to that.
So I'm just curious, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask one more time. So if I'm a resident taxpayer, which I am, I get 1 parking pass, I get 4 facility beach passes that are photo IDs, and then I can buy 2 more no-picture transferable passes.
No, that's part of the package. These are packages, so
Okay.
if you get it.
Oh, for a lock. And how would you, and just curious, how are you going to monitor if they're being abused? The ones that are no picture IDs, how can you monitor?
Well, they're like cash, so it's not, the only thing that would be abused is if you went to the beach and then we see you passing that back to let me back on, that's abuse
Oh,
of that
so that type
transferable
of
pass.
abuse,
It's used
but-
for one person.
and Steve, the other thing is, when someone buys them, they have to identify who they are purchasing them, correct?
Yeah.
And Michelle's going to keep a tally of who that is, so we'll
So
have a list.
they have a list of the people they're buying them for?
Right. So, no, it'll be, if Mike Moretti buys 4, they'll know you buy 4. They'll also know if Patrick comes and buys 40.
No,
They'll
I
know
buy
if Susan
100.
comes
Yeah,
and
no,
buys
I know,
4.
but if I buy 4.
Passes for everybody.
Yeah, no. If I buy 4,
Right.
there's no pictures on those.
Correct, they're
So,
transferable.
so you really don't know who I'm giving those to?
Correct, but they do know that you bought 4.
Yeah, but if I buy 4 and I give them to my neighbor.
So what
That's where the
Steve is saying
director's
is that
gonna have
he
to
wants
So,
to make
Miss,
sure, yeah.
call your friend on Ocean Road, have him buy a couple passes, then you get on the beach next week.
And the other
Next year.
explanation is the $200 the business transferable pass. If you're a business in town or you're renting, then we have that list, and then you're expected, or you have to purchase a transferable pass.
And we made a commitment to take a good look at those transferable passes. If there was an unusual amount sold, that you would
We could
flag
always
that.
limit 'em. Let them to 10.
Yeah, I think,
10 per
I mean,
person.
that might be something we might do after the season, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else wishing to speak to this motion? Is there anybody else wishing to speak to the motion? All right, we're on 9B. All those in favor of the motion in front of us?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes.
Never go to the beach again.
9C, a motion to amend the resolution establishing the Narragansett Beach Facilities fee schedule for the 2018 season to change the fee for the non-resident South Pavilion lockers from NA to 600. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I just...
This
did
is
you wanna come
married
up?
to number 9. So with number 9, we have to make this change because when we voted on the schedule last meeting, it was NA in this column. Now that we've approved number 9, we are putting in $600, like we're restoring what used to be.
So, Steve, after we vote on this or before, I just want to run through a summary of all the things that we voted on. I just want to run through my list, okay?
Okay.
So, do you want to just finish this one up? Do you have any questions on this last one? Everybody, you're good? Anybody from the public?
Stanley.
Stanley? Really?
Let's go to 9. You already said it once. I'll go to 9, right?
You want to increase it to
$1,000.
$1,000? Yeah, you said that, right? We got it.
Stanley,
Thank you,
I wanna see
Stanley.
you on the beach.
Okay, thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
All those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. And I just want to just quickly say, here's what we did, because I know there was some confusion, because we had 3 motions the last time and 3 motions this time. A summary of the beach changes. We eliminated non-resident seasonal passes for senior, adult, and the youth. We made a compromise for the grandfather and of the 103 locker holders at the South Pavilion, allowing them 1 car pass instead of 2 in the South lot. 2017 and prior non-resident guests previously listed as guest 1 on the resident taxpayer in North Pavilion and South Pavilion will remain or may be changed. Non-resident guest lists in the South Pavilion must park in the South lot. From this point forward, only Narragansett residents and taxpayers can lease lockers and get car passes to the Narragansett Town Beach, eliminating the South Pavilion non-resident waiting list. That's done. We increased the daily fee from $8 to $10. The resident and taxpayer transferable pass decreased from $100 to $75. Business and non-resident transferable passes remain at $200. These are the changes that we made. Every year, we have a workshop, we review, we listen to the public, we talk to the director, we take all the concerns in. This last season, we had parking issues, we had youth issues, and we feel like all the things that we voted on, I think, were a good compromise to accomplish what we wanted for the next season. So I hope that everybody understands the changes and can live with them, and we're going to move on the agenda. Okay, now we're on motion 11. Thank you, Steve and Michelle. Thank you, visitors. Don't come on Sunday. Number 12. Sorry. Number 12, motion 12, a motion to approve the paddle sports business concession contract at Middlebridge with Narrow River Kayaks for the Park and Recreation Department at the annual payment to the town of $32,500 for a 5-year period. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Steve, you have this on, and you want to come on up and just, this actually came up a while back, but we were in litigation and we were, dealing with the court, so we waited for clearance from the solicitor to make sure that we were in good shape with this contract again, so.
So, as you know, there's a very long history with this. We've been working on this for many, many years, and so we're happy collectively as a team with the council, with the town manager and myself to be working on this. I think we've worked on the language, we've worked on negotiating this contract price. So I'm happy to say that the town manager and myself were able to negotiate this fee for 5 years, actually last year, and because of the other understanding that we had to go through, that now we're ready to propose this and hopefully be able to get this moved so we can move forward and have some stability at Narrow River and in Middlebridge for the next 5 years. So, any questions?
I have a question on so I'm just, this is, if I just was looking at the formula, so, I mean, if it rains every day in the summer, do we still collect the fee, the $32,500?
This is rain or shine.
Thank you.
Rain or shine.
Just want to make sure.
If Susan, 4 years ago, we selected Narrow River Kayaks, and we thought it was in the best interest of the town to select them. Right. And we were subject to litigation over that decision. That's the reason that we were not able to, we just left the amount that was being brought in year after year because of litigation. We didn't want to act in any bad faith standard. So the court found that we did not violate the bidding statute. Mark can correct me if I'm wrong here, but that we did not violate that, and that we did as a council act in good faith with our selection. So we were very happy with that result.
Yes, we were.
And that litigation is now closed.
The other thing I want to add is, Jason, I see in the audience, you probably are very relieved, but serving on the Land Trust like Matt and I do, I know the Land Trust is very excited to have you on board and working with them and the Narrow River Associations, all the projects going forward. So thank you for hanging out. Look forward to a great future with you.
Steve, I had a question. The parking on both sides of the street on Middlebridge,
Yes, sir.
Now, the revenue from that, where does that go?
This is an all-inclusive package, so
Right.
we've worked out the parking. So, as you know, URI crew is there. We also
Yep.
have the parking for the marina. We also have parking for, also for the caretaker and also for the residents that are there. So we've worked it out, so it includes restrictions for the overflow parking for Jason's operation. But again, we have a great working relationship with Jason. That's
Right.
why we're moving forward with this.
Right.
He knows the working parameters. He works well with Matt. He works well with myself in the Parks Department. It's a great working document, and I can't say enough about our relationship, so.
Okay, but who gets the revenue from the parking?
It goes, it's all working goes back into the,
Right,
part of the
it goes,
lease. It's part of the lease,
it
yep.
goes to the kayak place.
And we get a percentage of that.
Oh, yeah, okay, what's the percentage of that?
It's,
Yeah. Yeah, that's no question.
it's all part of the lease.
All right, so we don't, so if he gets $10 a car, we don't get a piece of that?
Not that I'm aware of, right, Jason?
Included in there, there's also a small building that his,
Yeah, 20%.
20%,
Yeah.
okay, all right, that was my question. All right,
Thanks,
thank you.
Jason. Thank you, Steve. You're all good? Anybody from the public? Thank you, Steve. Stanley?
That really is a fantastic place. And did we get 3 quotes on this issue? I kind of think that's probably worth 50,000 instead of 32. How did we come up with 32?
So
Was there a bid put out somewhere, so we had some
So I'm
bidding
happy to
going?
answer that, Stanley. Since it's a concessionaire for the town, we don't have to bid it out.
We
That
don't
was
have
the
to
whole
bid it out.
suit.
Are you sure you got the right price now? That's what they always
We're
say on these
sure.
reels. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure somebody's not going to give you 50,000 or 40,000 a year?
We're
That's
happy with
number-
what they
okay, that's
negotiated.
number one. Number two is, 5 years, I mean, can't we at least go over inflation every year? I mean, every year you got to
Well, we're
figure
gonna look at it at
32.
5 years.
Inflation, 1 year.
Well, that's
Next
been the
year,
norm, right? 3 to
little
5 years for the
inflation, maybe
contracts.
2-3% a year, for, just to stay stagnant for 5 years. I'm just saying, I'd like to see more responsibility in the money side. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Congratulations, Jason. We're happy to have you.
Now you got some stability over there.
Yes. Congratulations, good for you. Okay, moving on the agenda. Number 13.
No boy.
A motion to adopt an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 70 and the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett entitled Taxation and Finance, Class 2 Tax Classification. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion from the council for any kind of will for an amendment to meet in the middle on this?
So I would move to amend the 125 to 140.
Do I have a second for the
How about,
140?
if we're gonna meet in the middle, shouldn't it be 3750?
I just need a second on my motion.
That's a nice compromise.
3750?
The 140.
Well, no, Susan, we had the compromise.
Do I have, is there a second for the 140?
I'll second 140.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the 140?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Yes, that was a compromise, I thought.
No, it wasn't a
Well,
compromise.
I-
Susan, we had the compromise.
Okay, Patrick, we're moving on to 14.
And Pat, let's do this. Come next spring, let's go back and take a look at going up to the State House. Mike and I already spoke about this. We're willing to put the work in with you, and we'll see what we can do.
We got the mechanism
Okay,
right
but
here.
Pat,
We
we
don't have to
just
go
can't go
grovel to the General Assembly, because all those people have beach houses down here, they're
Okay.
not gonna do jack.
Okay, so let's move on the agenda. The next one
Susan?
is,
Madam President, that is now a first reading, and will come back for the next meeting for adoption.
okay, thank you, Ann, I appreciate that. Okay. No public hearing, though, just a second
Unless
reading.
somebody has
Yeah, okay.
200 signatures, right?
Okay, so, okay, thank you. 14.
30 signatures?
A motion to adopt an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 46 in the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Miscellaneous Offenses, Consumption or Possession of Alcohol Beverages. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. From the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0, motion passes. A motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 46 in the Code of Ordinances, the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Miscellaneous Offenses, Penalties for Violation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I'm going to, just a clarification of Sean, if I'm wrong, just let me know. But basically, we're changing this to have a flat penalty of $500 for each offense. That's how I'm reading it. Is that correct? Yes. Sure, yeah.
Come on, step up.
I think it's important, because this is fines associated with many of the public nuisance type behaviors.
This is just housekeeping. The council voted a couple of years back to raise the fine to $500, but it was only changed on the schedule of fines. The actual ordinance itself was not changed, so that's caused some confusion with the public. So we've been enforcing on the 500. I'm just cleaning it up right now so I don't continually get the questions about.
And law enforcement's been very strong about this with the enforcement issues, and we hear about let's do more enforcement, and the message has been from them to have the flat rate, and we've had some people argue, oh, the prosecutor needs discretion. We're not interested in prosecutorial discretion, I'm sorry to say, and with these particular fines, we're interested in a strong law and order message for the public nuisances.
Yep. And Chief, I asked you late in the day, so I apologize if you didn't even see the email, but as far as the community service, I know a lot of the people that are really concerned about some of the URI students that do occasionally get a little rowdy are curious as to how many are actually assigned to community service. Do you have any estimate about anyone who comes forward? I mean, what is a community service and how much is given out so far this year?
Well, the way that it works is first of all, we don't get many people who actually get cited with this, because usually when we do the nuisance warning, that shuts it down. But when we do get it, it's a first offense and the community service is optional. So you're probably not going to see a lot there. I don't have to run the numbers for you. It only becomes mandatory in the second and third offense. And that wasn't changed. That was a carryover from the way it's always been.
Thank you,
Thank
Chief.
you very much, thanks.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, motion passes. 16, a motion to introduce, read, and pass and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 74 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Traffic and Vehicles, Article 5, Specified Street Regulations, No Through Trucking.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
Is this the, Chief, is this from the picture I saw in the video, the transfer of waste? This is a different issue, right?
Yeah.
This is people cutting through
Mumford Road.
Road.
Well,
That's a
Boston Neck.
shortcut, and it's
Lambert.
really not their neighborhood, and they're causing problems, causing traffic and causing backlogs. If you play tennis at the Sprague tennis courts, you can sometimes see the line.
So no through trucking, so meaning commercial trucks, meaning? Okay, all right. Is that, 7,000, I see it, okay, sorry, yep, I understand.
Any discussion from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 17, a motion to receive and accept a reimbursable grant award from the Department of Homeland Security 2015 Port Security Grant Program in the amount of $384,000 and approve the expenditure of funds. Do I have a motion?
So move.
A second?
Second.
Discussion? So is that true that the little boat got wrecked? Can you address that? And this would be a good opportunity. I was actually looking to you, the manager.
Yes, the little boat did get wrecked.
Yeah.
So this agenda item, I've looked at it 360 degrees over the past year and few months. Sometimes I was for it, sometimes I wasn't. After the last storm, where we had that woman that was washed off the rocks, we've had several rescues this year, and that was the most dramatic. Chief Partington was on the phone with me as it was going on. The woman was crying for help. They couldn't find her because of the fog. They needed a big boat to locate her. Coast Guard was en route. I know Coast Guard's represented here, and they do a great job, but Homeland Security in the United States has taken precedent over patrolling the waters of Narragansett. So it's time that we have a rescue fire suppression boat like this. So once again, I went back and forth on this over the past year, but the past couple of months have really supported that we need a larger boat, not only for the public safety, but for the safety of the firefighters who are having to go in and rescue these people. That night that Chief Partington called me, there were police officers and firefighters standing on the rocks, chomping at the bit to jump in and find this woman who was calling for help. And we did not have a boat to support that. We had a very small boat. The swells, I think, were very large that night, 5 to 7 feet, 8 feet, with heavy winds and no visibility. Chief Partington does a great job getting money for this town as far as grants. I had a couple of concerns about this grant that over the past year that I think have been overcome, and I want to address that with you. Number one, there was a matching portion of approximately $100,000. Chief Partington worked over the past year to trade in old equipment and to defray that cost to the point where we have no matching funds. If I'm correct, Chief, that's correct? We have no matching funds on this. There's also a $24,000 grant to support overtime for the firefighters to learn how to use this boat and for rescue swimming and so forth. The other concern I had was for sustainability. How much would this cost in overtime? Would this boat be used in like a task force where it'd be called to North Kingston and Newport and Providence? It could, the request could come in, but it would be at our discretion, the town, whether we would send it. Obviously, if there's a ferry going down or a true emergency, we would absolutely support our neighbors. But if it's something that the town manager or the fire chief does not support that mission, we wouldn't send it. We don't have to send it. If you look at the port of Galilee, we have a lot of ferries that go in and out every day. We've seen ferry accidents across the world where ferries have gone down, caught fire, and so forth. We do not have that capability to support a rescue function right now. So I would ask the chief just to answer any technical questions you have on this, and if you have any reservations, please bring them up and we can address it tonight.
I'm good. I think it's good.
Yeah, we've been through this, what, 2 years ago? First of all, Chief, what happened to the other boat?
Susan was correct. It was wrecked.
How?
It was wrecked in a rescue attempt going in after a couple of boys clinging to a boogie board off of
right,
the Coast Guard restaurant area.
So how did it get wrecked? Did you?
It was heavy surf and wind that day. There was a storm, a lot of swells. We actually weren't going to launch the boat, but it came down to a decision that nobody could get to the boys, and they were still floating out there, washing out to out into the bay. So the people, the crew there, made a decision to put the boat in, and in the process in doing so, it caught the swells. Turned the boat around, damaged the trailer, put a couple of holes in the boat, the bottom of the boat that we found out afterwards. And then in the process of hitting one of the swells, or several of the swells head on, the boat basically started to crunch on the way there.
Yeah.
So it was, there was a lot of luck and good fortune at the time. It was a decision that was made. There was a couple of young boys out there, so they made a decision to go out, and I commend them in doing so, and it worked out to be successful. So in the process, that's how.
So
the boat
where
was
did you
damaged.
launch the boat from?
It was launched at Monahan's Pier 5.
With heavy swell?
And heavy rolling swells.
That wrecked the boat. Okay, so I'd hate to approve this, and the next storm, and into the enthusiasm of getting out to people, we wreck a $380,000 boat. So is there a policy in place?
Yes, there is.
Or where are you gonna launch it from? Or do you have a davit type system where you can drop it in, like off a ship?
Well, there is a policy in place, an existing policy in place, and we emulate what the Coast Guard uses in a GAR score, and we have a risk assessment before we go into the water. And that's what was done at that point in time.
And that's not usual practice. I mean, that wrecking of the boat isn't a common
No.
practice in Narragansett.
Well,
That-
No,
the
it comes.
problem is,
So every
Susan-
mission before we go out on, Councilman Murray, we assess the situation and make the determination of whether to do so or not based on
Right.
our capabilities,
Right.
the conditions that are out there, and the skill level of those members that are operating that boat. So there will be times where we'll say, no, we can't go, and there'll be times when we will say, yes, we are going.
Well, the problem is, for me, is generally that Monahan's Dock launch is, you know, if you get some kind, usually things happen in the worst kind of weather, okay? And in that situation, things happen like that, and you got the bad weather, and that ramp just isn't set up. It is not protected enough to launch any boat at, you know, in relatively, even a small sea. Wouldn't you agree?
There are some complications that would come up with that boat, particularly at low tide and in heavy swells, yes, which we encountered
So
on
I
that
guess
day.
I'm asking, in that event, where would you launch it from? From Point Judith?
Well, the boat won't be launched from that area. The boat will actually be docked down in Great Island, right along the Great Island Bridge.
Great Island.
We work with DEM, and they've allocated a space for us up against the bulkhead there.
Right.
For the time being, until we can find another spot on a dock that would be even further accessible. But this is a good spot. It is a good spot for us. We can come easily down.
It's at no cost as well.
Yeah, well, I know.
So the boat will be in the water. The boat will be ready.
Yeah.
We're not going to be trailing it. It won't be a trailered
I'm
asset.
surprised, the last time we had a picture of the boat and specs and stuff, I don't have any of that information.
Well, I did, in March, I did send out quite an elaborate report. I sent it out to all the councilmen as well as the
I
town
don't mean to put you
manager.
on the spot there, but I just, you know.
And that included all the specifications of the
Right.
boat. There were pictures that were included in that. And I think there's another brief packet as well that I gave to you that were
How big is
presented
it?
to you.
How big is it? I'm just curious.
Well, right now, we're looking at a 28-foot vessel. It's a catamaran-style
Yep, I know.
aluminum-grade hull, which is a lot of low maintenance.
And your goal is to keep
Outboard.
it, your goal is to keep it in the water.
The goal is to keep it in the water. Right around this time, we'd be looking at taking it out of the water.
For winterization.
For the winter months. We would have the ability to keep it in winter months, but it would have to be plugged in
Yep, I understand.
and heated and
Yep.
so forth and that. But right now, we're looking to take it out, come around this time of the year, put it back in April, late April, early May. It'll be stationed down in the port.
Right.
And that's what it is. It's a port security grant. So it's primarily helping to secure the port as well as all that, give fire suppression as well as medical care and treatment as well. It's not just a fire boat. It's not just a rescue boat. It's essentially a rescue vehicle on the water that's capable of giving ALS treatment and care for patients on the water.
So it's equipped with radar, I imagine?
It'll be equipped with radar. It's a seaburn capable boat. It will be an enclosed cab. It will be filtered. It will have a fire pump on it, able to pump about 550 gallons a minute of water, give foam. It will give substantial fire protection to that fleet in that area, as well as the marinas, as well as the facilities around that, as well as many of the businesses. And it'll be equipped with it'll be low draft, and it'll have a hydraulic bow that will allow to access many of the smaller little islands that we have and sandbars.
You mean
in
it's
the
got a
area.
bow that drops down?
It has a hydraulic bow on the front. It's the boat that
Right.
we're currently looking
Right.
at and specking out.
Okay. So I haven't seen any of this.
So I guess this is a question for the chief, probably Jim and Matt. The Galley Advisory, what do they think? What do the fishermen, what role would this boat have in interacting with the fleet?
Well, I would think that the fleet would be very excited about the support of a fire suppression boat in the port. I've had discussions with several business owners down there, many of whom who own boats. One of them's here this evening, and he's very in support of the boat itself. I haven't heard any complaints come my way as far as the fishing industry is concerned in the support of this vessel in the harbor. This evening we have the U.S. Coast Guard is here as well. Senior Petty Officer Stephen Beasley from United States Coast Guard Point Judith is here. And as you know, we have an excellent working relationship with the Coast Guard, and we work closely with them and do a lot of training with them. They've been in support of this project from the very beginning. In fact, this project, when you apply, it has to go through the Southeast Sector Coast Guard for them to look at that as it makes its way up to Washington. So they were in support of this project as well, and I have an excellent letter of support from then commander down here, which was Chief John Roberts at the time. So the Coast Guard is in support of it as well.
Is there a radiological and biological testing equipment on board?
Yes, as part of the CBRN capabilities, there'll be a sensor on board that will be able to detect radiation. It's essentially a hazmat vessel as well.
Scott, thank you for all the work you do with the grant and obtaining them. This has been bandied about for a couple of years. Jim articulated that it was originally on an agenda with Pam maybe 2.5 years ago. And the arguments pro and con, and they're out there. Jill, no, it hasn't really come before Galley Advisory Committee. I believe the Harbor Commission may have looked at it. I never put it before the Galley Advisory Commission. It's more,
right.
I just didn't.
Noah's here, so.
So to answer your question on that, I never did that. But the concern with the boat is the jurisdictional concern that Jim alluded to, which is there's a crisis on the water in a neighboring town that doesn't have as sophisticated a boat, and then what happens when they need us to send our boat over? And so that's been, I've expressed my doubts. Scott and I have met about this boat several times and different sizes of this boat, and but I don't know if that concern for me has been satisfied, meaning that if a North Kingstown, South Kingstown, or another city or town, there's a problem there, we're not going to say no. Jim said, we would be within our discretion. It's going to be a tough sell to say no to somebody
Well, we
who's
do it
in
now.
crisis.
With all due
To say
respect,
to them,
we
yeah.
do it now. Keep in mind, this is nothing more than mutual aid out on the water. It works the same way as mutual aid here on land. We get requests all the time for apparatus to respond to North Kingstown, to South Kingstown. And there are times when we say, no, we can't go. And that's just how it works. That's how it's understood that way.
It's a unique situation, though, the boat versus with police and regular fire. It just is. I mean, we have mutual aid. That's why there's the distinction.
There's no obligation. There's no obligation for us to respond outside of our normal jurisdictional boundaries. Other than, they're in dire need,
But in reality, I think it's going to be hard to say no if we have a tool that another city or town doesn't have. That's just been my concern with it from the beginning. I just want to.
Well, keep in mind, it will be over in the harbor area. That's where it's going to be stationed, and we do have jurisdictional areas over there with Jerusalem. So if you're concerned about it going over to the Jerusalem or South Kingstown side, it's not very far. Yes, we would likely respond over that area. But as far as going out to out around the point over to Jamestown or up further up into the bay up in North Kingstown. North Kingstown has their own asset that they're perfectly capable of handling. Going out to Charlestown, it's primarily around our jurisdictional area, which would include the harbor, Jerusalem, around through the point and up around our bay side of the waters. Yep.
So just quickly for me, so the grant was for 384?
The total grant award was for $384,000. $360,000 is included for the purchase of the fire rescue Seaburn boat.
Okay, all right.
And $24,000 is for the training aspect of it.
I understand.
So a total of $384 with no match. Originally, it was going to cost $120,000 match, and going back over the last 18 plus months or so, we were able to get a waiver for that.
So is this grant related to buying this particular boat? You can't downsize a little bit? And use the money for something?
Well, it has to fulfill certain requirements, one of which is it has to be a fire suppression, Seaburn capable boat.
Right.
So, you need a certain size platform in which to accommodate that. We're at about the limit at which that can be accommodated at 28 feet to be able to fit everything on there.
All right, the girl that was in the water, didn't the harbor master show up out there?
The harbor master, I don't know if he actually came on. Yes, I think he was on his way.
I think the Coast Guard responded to that one.
But then we turned the harbor master away on that particular event. He responded to another event.
Because the Coast Guard's only, Point Judith only goes down to what? Where's your jurisdiction there, Amanda? It comes up to around Black Point, yeah, so they only go down to Black Point, and then Castle Hill takes from Newport to Black Point, correct?
So I had reservations too. So Chief Parrington asked.
I don't know why I didn't see
Chief Parrington asked me to put this on the agenda a couple of times, and a couple of times we put it off but there were two events that happened. One was the woman in the water, but there was another one too with the hurricanes and the floods that we recently had. Chief Parrington called me one night, and it was especially bad weather here. There was one Coast Guard vessel covering a tremendous area. All the other Coast Guard vessels had gone down to these areas that needed. So we had one vessel covering from like Castle Hill to Block Island to Narragansett to Westerly. So there was a need for it. The big thing was sustainability. Would it cost us money to have this boat?
But it's costing you nothing to get the boat.
Right.
So it's costing you nothing to get the boat. You have a port that transports thousands of people day in and day out in front of multiple marinas, in front of multiple businesses. And it's we're not talking about a 40-foot cutter that the Coast Guard would have. We're talking about a 28-foot fire suppression boat. To me, I'm actually surprised that we never had something like this in that port. So I'm just confused. I know there's a lot of money floating around, but this is a federal grant designed exactly for this purpose, correct?
Correct. It's a low-maintenance boat. We're not talking about twin diesel engines. We're talking about outboard boats. Motors that we're looking at are warranted for 5 years.
I've been a boater for a long time. Yep. I just sold my boat. It's the happiest day, right, when you get one, when you sell one. So I just sold my boat. I understand completely what you're getting into, and to me, just the basis of the fact that we have the Port of Galilee, and I know the Coast Guard is there, thank you very much, but the fact that we do not have a vessel designed to take care of business like, anything, a ferry going aground, somebody jumping off the ferry, somebody running into another boat.
It's a federal issue.
Yeah, but how do we respond to that?
It's a federal issue, but who are they calling? They're calling us. They're asking us to respond. It comes down to the local authorities. They're going to be asking us to effect rescues. I don't know.
If a ferry runs aground, he's going to go on Channel 16. He's going to make an announcement, Mayday, Mayday. Every crackpot in a 10-mile area in a boat is going to show up.
And if a fishing boat is on fire, if a pier is on fire, if there's a medical incident aboard a ferry, if there are people in the water who need rescue, who are they going to call? Who's going to be responding?
Who have they been calling? I don't know. I mean, and then the equipment, the biological and the radiological, all that equipment is very expensive to maintain.
We're looking at a portable unit, which is not very expensive to maintain, and we could actually probably get them calibrated at the local university where we have an existing nuclear facility up there who would be more than happy to calibrate our own machines for us.
Chief, could you explain it's going through the General Assembly about providing a $10,000 a year sustainability grant for anyone that has a boat like this?
As of last budget year in the General Assembly, there was pending legislation for municipalities who were involved with the Narragansett Bay Marine Task Force. They were looking at supplementing their operational and maintenance costs. At the time, Narragansett was going to be awarded for our little boat $6,000 annually for maintenance costs, operational costs. Seaburn capable boats, which is a larger platform, which is the one that we're seeking, they were going to be awarded or granted $10,000 annually in maintenance and operational costs. But I guess the car tax exemption maybe won out in that budget battle, so that was not accepted in the last assembly battle. It's probably going to come up again in the next General Assembly budget. So there's potential for that to move forward as well. So we would be receiving $10,000 annually in those supporting the operational costs for it.
I know there's a grant for 25 for overtime for training. Did you calculate how many man hours to operate a vessel like this? And then what's going to happen when you guys are out on a run, and who's at the station? I mean, it's
the same thing that happens now.
To me, this is
Patrick,
expansion.
I don't want to interrupt you. The thing is with this issue is it comes down to there's a philosophical concern about the jurisdictional issues, and as you've just talked about the training costs, and you've asked the questions about that, and that's why it's been bandied about for 2 years. And I articulated my concerns, and it's just been a tough one. It's not. This is not an easy. I know it sounds great. There's a grant, but it is a unique situation. It's not the same as the fire truck, and I don't want there to be any hard feelings. I know there won't be, but that's the concern. There's the jurisdictional piece and unanticipated costs. After you can get a grant for something, but then you've got to maintain the vessel. You've got to maintain that piece of property. You can get a grant for anything, a grant for land, a grant for, but then now the town taxpayers are paying.
I can appreciate that, and I looked at that, and I looked at the costs. North Kingstown right now, talking with Chief Cattell, is spending approximately $1,500 a year in maintenance costs. Their boat is bigger. They pull it out of the water. They paint the bottom every year. They have maintenance people go through their engine. The same thing would happen here. We have certified marine mechanics available to us here in town. It's oil changes. It's changing the plugs. It's pulling it out of the water, painting the bottom. We're looking at about $1,500 in annual maintenance costs going forward. The mechanics of it, the engines are guaranteed for 5 years, Honda engines. The pump on board is guaranteed for 3 years. Operational costs, the first year are paid for. Going forward, it's already set apart in my budget where I have 20 hours of straight time to be able to allocate towards so many hours of training, which we would do with marine aspect. So the operational costs are not extravagant. If we do find that they are going down the road, I pick up the phone. If I'm told to, I pick up the phone. I make a phone call to Rhode Island EMA, Director Gaynor, and I say, Peter, it's not working out. The town doesn't want the boat anymore. So he would take the asset and look to move the asset on to another municipality who might want it. That's where we're at. So I have explored those concerns, those operational
How is
costs.
the minimum manning gonna plug in to manning a boat?
How will the minimum manning plug in?
Yeah, how
You
does
mean
that?
how will we
How does
operate it
that
and
correlate and operate? I mean, you're gonna need, what, at least 3 guys on the boat, right, at any given time?
There's 2 to 3 guys. We look to get a smaller platform. That's one of the reasons why we went smaller, and why we went with a catamaran-style outboard motor, to be able to look at operate it with 2 people on board. That's currently how we operate with our other vessel, with 2 people on board. So we looked at you know, a smaller platform with an easier maneuverable operating system on board with the outboards, to be able to operate with 2 people.
Right.
So that was the concern I had, minimum manning, because that's what's driving the cost of the fire department. So that was the first question I had with Chief Parrington. How will this affect minimum manning? They're not going to be going on this boat just patrolling like a police car. No, it's going to be used for emergencies and training. That's all it's going to be used for. Chief Parrington satisfied my questions in that there's 8 firefighters minimum manning, correct, per shift? Right. Just because they're going on the boat for an emergency, we're not backfilling those guys. It's if we have other firefighters sitting in stations around town, if we need this vessel to go on a call, we're not going to automatically start calling other firefighters for the other facilities unless we need them, unless there are multiple events going on. So
the boat doesn't cost you capital outlay, doesn't cost you anything. You're not hiring additional firefighters or rescue personnel to man the boat specifically.
Correct.
The only cost associated with it is the normal wear and tear maintenance outside of, you know, the warranties and anything else. So I'm trying to figure out where the holdup is, because for me, it seems like this should have already existed.
I want to hear more about giving the boat back if it doesn't work out.
Well, the fact that it's been going for 2 years, it's probably going to be a split vote. That's how democracy works, guys. There's a philosophical split. That's why it's been going on, right? So we're going to vote and move forward. I mean, it's getting a little painful.
It's a grant.
So I'll answer your question.
Healthy to have the discussion, but at some point, we have to make a decision as a council. But it's not a no-brainer. It's not. This is one that has been struggled with for 2 years.
So the state police had a similar boat. The motors went on it. They didn't want to put the money in to fix it. They pulled it out of the water, and they left it till they got the money to fix it. And they got some emergency management assistance. So we can pull a boat from the water if 3-5 years from now, the costs to fix it are too high for the comfort level of the town.
Right.
So it's not something that, once we get it, I'm sure it'll work out. I'm hopeful it'll work out.
And as you know, I'm constantly pursuing additional grants. There will always be additional
I know you are, Chief.
funding to support the training operations going forward on this project. Once the federal government is invested in you on a project like this, they want to see you succeed. There's more of a tendency to award you even successive grants to continue with your project in this.
I can't believe them. All right, whatever, let's go.
Yeah, well, I think there's some people in the public that want to speak, so, Richard, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember, I just plodded through 2 centuries of history in Narragansett, and believe me, this has been an ongoing issue. The number of rescues, the number of failed rescues, the dead people that have been attracted to the beach during bad times is unfortunately non-stoppable. So this, I think, is one solution, but it has to be part of a plan. And this is fine, and it has to be if people are out there on boogie boards. You're certainly not going to let them die. But somehow, as part of an overall plan, we need an additional grant to figure out how can we somehow minimize the number of people who are drawn to the beach, to the ocean in times of disaster. This is our problem. The worse the weather is, the more wild the waves, the worse the undertow, the more people come and want to participate in the process. They sometimes eke out on hazard rocks. They want to get the feel for it. This has been going on at least for 200 years, and what we haven't really developed, I know we've tried a couple of times, is an overall policy. How do we minimize the risk? And I would love to apply, the town apply for a federal grant to figure out how do we somehow disentract people in bad weather. I've seen people out there fishing on the rocks, and the people say, oh, this is good because you can really catch fish when the ocean is turbulent. And on we go. So I mean, so this is fine, but somehow I would love to see an overall plan as to how can we minimize people going out there for risk.
Thank you, Richard.
I'm Noah Clark. My business at 45 State Street, Galilee. I don't know about 200 years, but I've been in Galilee for 52, and I've seen plenty of boat fires. I've seen a lot of things go on down there that the public hasn't seen. I think this is a great idea. For example, I've seen plenty of boat fires that didn't get there in time. The boats went down. Not only is it a disaster for the families, but it's a disaster, it's a cleanup mess. 3 years ago, there were 2 boat fires down there. Had we had this boat in Galilee, we might have saved one of them. The other one went to the bottom. I'm telling you that I think the port is in dire need of something like this. And my only recommendation is don't pull a boat out, leave it there year-round.
Excuse me, sir, the bulkhead, all along the bulkhead in Galilee, aren't there fire hydrants and fire stations?
That's true.
Okay, now,
However, the boat that caught on fire, it was blowing so hard that day that they couldn't get the hose to the boat. If you had a boat like that that came around and in the lee of the wind, could have put that boat out.
and where was the Coast Guard? The Coast Guard was there. How come they didn't
The
put the boat out?
Coast Guard doesn't have any fire suppressant.
They don't have any fire
No,
suppressant.
they might have a fire
Thank
extinguisher.
you, Noah. Thank you. Win.
I'm going to disagree with you, Patrick, because I think this is a no-brainer. I know there's expense involved. I know you've vetted it.
My brother's Patrick, but that's okay, Win.
I think the chief has done a phenomenal job in what he's done. I agree. Living in this town for 65 years, I've seen people, I haven't seen people, but there have been people who have died off Narragansett Town Beach. People have died off the rocks. We haven't had anything like this at all to be able to go rescue them. Used to put up a life ring down at Hazard Avenue. That continued to get stolen. So we don't do that anymore. There's no protection of these people. People are going to come from everywhere just to fish. They don't know about the slippery rocks. They don't know about Newton Avenue, Hazard Avenue. This, if it saves one person, it's worth it. You can't put a price on a person's life. And for us, being surrounded completely by water, I think it is a no-brainer.
Thank you, Win.
Hey, Jim,
Tom?
since it's been brought up a couple times tonight, could you talk about what you and DPW did during this last storm to keep safe?
Sure. I'll be brief and I'll
Yeah, be brief,
describe.
because Tom was just coming to the
So,
podium.
Professor Vangamish, that
Ann
your
caught
question was something that I'm glad I had the opportunity to address. We have a plan. We've come up with a plan. Mike DeCicco, DPW Director, Chief Partington, Chief Corrigan, myself have met, and we came up with a comprehensive plan on how to keep people away when the storms hit, tying up our emergency services, but how to keep them off Bass Rock, all those roads you talked about, Newton Road. So when when there's high surf, high winds, we set up water barriers blocking access to those rocks now. We did it for the first time 2 weeks ago, and it worked well. We had not one complaint. We put up signs, high wind, high surf, stay away. It worked well. We also have the ability to block these roads except for local traffic. So we tried it for the first time, and it worked very well.
Thank you. Tom?
Good evening. My name's Tom Warren. I live on 26 Jakes Way, Narragansett. I have a little bit of experience in this, as I was the Assistant Chief of the Providence Fire Department for 33 years. I just retired. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I think it's important to understand, we talked at length here about the course and how it operates and all those other mechanisms. And Chief Partington did a good job putting this together. He selected the right boat for the town of Narragansett. In Providence, we had a very big boat. It's been a lot of problems, a lot of expense. This boat that he selected is a good fit for what it's needed for. But I think what the most important aspect is that when something happens, whether it's a boat fire, somebody slips off the rocks, the fire department's going to go. They're going to be responding. They're going to be there. We owe it to our first responders, police and fire alike, to have a platform that they can work on that's safe for them. We can't send them out into harm's way without the tools and equipment that they need to operate effectively. This boat can do that. It would be wrong to try to send our people out there at risk to save money.
Excellent point. Thank you,
That's all I
Tom.
have to say. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Mary? Mary's going to speak. Mary, she's a beach
Do we have
boat.
any kind of insurance on the wreck boat? Getting money for that?
Yes.
How much?
We did have insurance. It was, the boat was very old. It was very outdated. I think we only received less than $10,000. Is that correct, Chief?
Thank you.
The value was like $7,000 or $8,000. It wasn't much.
Now, this package is gonna be the boat, the trailer, and the
This boat
trailer.
here?
The new one, boat, trailer, and train. And motor.
Yes, that's correct. But we're not going to trailer the boat. It's going to be in the water. Yeah, right.
Thank
We're
you.
going to pull in Stanley's antique car. That's what.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of this motion?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
4-1, motion passes. Congratulations.
Patrick, he didn't vote.
Well, I take that back. There were 3 of us. I know, that's right. I have to take it back because Patrick didn't vote. So let me,
We can give it back.
Don't answer.
Couple years, we'll say, oh, no, this ain't working out. Can we give it back?
first of all, I don't know what you guys are doing, but we're in the middle of a vote. So let me clarify with the
It's
clerk and
not.
the solicitor. We were in the middle of the vote. Patrick didn't vote, so now I need some guidance because I'm going to reread the motion and we can vote.
Or just vote, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, how do you want to vote? Because I need to call the,
Give it back. Can't give it back.
What is this?
I don't know.
Well,
what it is.
hang on, I got a question. I got another question.
I called the vote,
All
is
right,
right.
well,
So-
you know,
so
I-
we're waiting, so ask your question and then call it, but
Can we give the boat back if it ain't gonna
If
work
this
out?
boat turns out to be a disaster and it doesn't fit our needs, or it's something that is unwieldy, we will give it back.
All right, I will support this.
all in favor of the motion, 17, please vote.
Aye.
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 4,
That was a no. I already
and 1
voted.
nay. That was nay. 4-1, motion passes. Thank you, Chief, good job. Motion 18, a motion to approve the purchase of 1 Atlas Copcore Dynapack CC 900 roller with trailer from ATS Equipment, Inc. in accordance with the National Joint Powers Association pricing in the amount of $22,260. Do I have a vote?
So move.
I mean, a motion, sorry.
Second.
Discussion. Who put this on?
Mike DeChico.
Does anybody have a question for Mike? No. From the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. A motion to approve the purchase of one new 2018 Chevy Silverado 2500 HD4 wheeler drive pickup service truck with crane and plow from National Auto Fleet Group utilizing the National Joint Powers Alliance contract in the amount of $55,385.41. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions?
Yeah, is this gonna,
Discussion.
is this vehicle gonna pull the boat?
Any other questions?
Come on, Stanley, get up, because I have the answers already.
Actually, no, actually, before you get up, Stanley, before you get up, if you want to just highlight on this,
Sure.
on the car.
So in my Stanley file on research, the first question I asked, how many miles on the existing vehicle? It has 150,000 miles. It's 10 years old. What does this vehicle do? It's not a $55,000 truck. It's a $30-something thousand truck with a $25,000 piece of equipment, a crane. So I asked Mr. Cesarine, the engineer, what do we need a crane for? We have a crane, but why do we need a new one? We're lifting 1,000-pound fire hydrants with the crane, and we're lifting 550-pound barrels of chlorine. So the existing crane is past its useful life. It's rusted, it's frayed, we need a new one. You can only imagine dropping a 55-gallon drum of chlorine or a 1,000-pound fire hydrant. So this vehicle's 10 years old, has 150,000 miles on it, but more importantly, the crane has passed its useful service. We need a new piece of equipment and to tow the boat, Stanley. So, okay, so I'm satisfied. Those are the questions I asked. I was satisfied with the answers. And I think we can sell this, the existing older crane and make some money off that as well.
Okay, thank you. Anybody from the public? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Motion 20, a motion to award the bid for the beach food and beverage concession at the town beach for the Park and Recreation Department to the highest bidder, Fire and Water Concessions, Inc., at the annual quoted payment to the town of $135,001 for a 5-year period. Do I have a motion?
So move.
A second?
Second.
Discussion. This is an unbelievable price. Can you just come up, because it's a great
I want to know
bid.
why it's $1.
I know, that's weird, $135 and a dollar.
Can you answer the question about the dollar?
That's how you win a bid.
No, it's not, it's
a
just,
bid.
it's a new contract, and I'm thrilled
I
about
get
it.
it.
It's a
I
good
get it.
price.
What was the last one?
So this is a new 5-year bid for a food and beverage concession. This is not the frozen frozen beverage concession, which is a separate bid. We had the existing one had a three-year option. We chose not to do the 3-year option. So this
Not to interrupt you, Steve, but how much was it a year with the last company? How much did they pay per year?
Well,
90, was it 90?
When I first got here, the original bid, they were paying $42,000. That was a combination of food and beverage and frozen beverage. And then for the second 5 years, it was 97. This high bid is 135 for 5 years. Again, that's not including the frozen beverage, which I hope to come before you in December. But more importantly, it's not just about the price. Obviously, it's about the quality and the business practices. So we did our due diligence. This particular company is doing business for the state DEM. They're at East Petunic and Salty Brine State Beach. I also met with the owner during the bid process, and I did background checks with DEM. They are very satisfied with this company. They have a very clean operation. They pay on time, and they have very satisfied customers, and they do very good food, and their product is very reasonable. So I've heard nothing but good response from people that they serve.
Thanks, and I think the price is right, but you're right, the quality, I mean, people had been looking for a new option down at the town beach, so I'm
Yeah.
happy to have a new company come in.
A very simple menu. It's not all over the, so hopefully we'll
Great.
be satisfied.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody from the public wishing to speak? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Did everybody vote? Did you, Mike?
I said aye.
5-0, motion passes.
Finally got one.
Motion 21, a motion to approve the Beach Cabana Security Upgrade Project to be completed by Galaxy Integrated Technologies, Inc., utilizing the security system maintenance and improvement service contract in the amount of $12,486.20. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second? Discussion. Anybody from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Motion 22, a motion to approve the Beach Cabana Power and Lighting Project to be completed by E.W. Audit and Sons, Inc., utilizing the General Electrical Services contract in the amount of $44,450. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? From the public, Stanley?
Almost $50,000 for lighting. Are we in that bad a shape over there at the Cabanas that we have to do that? Can we postpone some of it? Can we do a little at a time? Maybe $10,000 a year for the next 5 years or something? Do we have to spend $50,000? Is it that bad? Why is the upgrade? The Cabana seems to be a very minor structural issue out there. I can't see that.
All right,
thank you.
we'll address that. Steve, can you just quickly address that on the lighting? I'm sure it was the best price, but we'll hear it for the record.
Actually, good question, but we've all been discussing, we've had some very major concerns about security, lighting, and also for cameras in that entire northern part of the beach. So from the North Beach Clubhouse and the entire Cabana area, we've been looking to invest in, there's no electricity at all in the Cabana area, so we're going to be putting lighting, security floodlights, and on top of that, that will also power our new camera system. So it's needed. We've had some major problems up there the last 2 or 3 years. This will be able to take care of that. In addition, it's being designed because hopefully we're going to be able to renovate the 2 sections of Cabanas. It's going to be designed so that security system and electrical system can be taken apart and being reinstalled on the renovation, because hopefully we're not going to be renovating from the platform up or platform down.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions from the public? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 23, a motion to approve the funding for and to authorize the town manager to sign the contract for NIHOT to evaluate and report on the town of Narragansett's, the OPEB and pension funds. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion.
Just a quick question, Jim, because I got an email from, I think you got the same email.
firefighter?
Yeah, I just want to make, I mean, I just want to hear out loud if we do research other companies, or if this is the company, or if we're under contract with them. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I did receive that email from Mr. Layton. So I deferred to Laura on this. This company has served us well. It's required for the town to do this study every year. It served us very well, very reactive to our questions. So Laura, was it a sole source bid, or it was our preference to use them? It was a preference to use them. The prices are all very similar, but we've had very good luck with NIHOT, and we're going to stick with them.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody from the public? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Motion 24, a motion to authorize the Narragansett Lions Club to utilize the North Beach Clubhouse for a holiday dinner for the community on Monday, December 25th, 2017, from 6 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m., and to waive any fees. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion?
There's no warm tent there, right, Susan?
No.
Okay.
And actually, the North Beach is different. Last year it was at the community center, this year at the North Beach, because the kitchen, I hear, is a little bit easier to use. So Did you want to say something, Wynn?
No, I'm reading it, so it's open from 6 to 3 to serve
It's
the
a
community.
wonderful opportunity for anybody in the public to come and have dinner.
I might be there, I'm serious.
This is a holiday
11.
meal that the Wright family used to do.
Set up.
With Ted's passing, and it's been at the community center. Community center's got a very small kitchen, so I suggested that we move it to the North Beach Clubhouse. We have a larger kitchen, a brand-new stove, and we publicize it. Hopefully we'll get more people there. We'll be serving from 11 to 1:30. Last year it was 11 to 2, but if people are coming in, they're welcome to stay. And as many people want to stop by, the more the merrier. These people come in and they like talking to people. They'll sit and if people go visit tables and talk with them, it's wonderful for them. And we had about 80, 85 people last year, and hopefully we'll have a few more this year.
I think it's great. I was away the last 2 years, so this is, I mean, I didn't know this existed, so this is great.
It was the first time I worked it, and it was wonderful, and you did a great job cooking, and I look forward to this Christmas being there
What are
again.
we having?
You want to go the whole menu?
It's all great, though. Thanks, Wynn. Thanks for that work. Any other questions about this? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. We're going to pull 25 until the December meeting.
Why is that?
Yeah, I can address that, Madam President. So there's nothing underlying with pulling this. The reason for this is this tax assessor position was in the union, 1033. We are finalizing the contract right now. We thought we'd have it finalized by today. So I think it would be inappropriate to hire a tax assessor without the formal signatures by the town and by the union.
I understand.
Great catch, yeah.
Okay, moving to motion 26, it's a motion to appoint or reappoint an individual to the planning board for a 5-year term to expire on November 1st, 2022. And we did interview tonight. We had two wonderful candidates, and I just was wondering if I had a
sorry.
I'll move to appoint Robin Plesiak.
And I'll second that.
And I'd like to, so can I nominate David?
Yep.
So I'd like to nominate David Trentiso.
Okay, so we have 2 votes on the floor, so since Robin came up first, we'll vote on that.
Yeah, can we just talk about it?
Yeah.
So do you want to
Go ahead,
talk?
So Robin's the first one. Robin Plesiak had attended planning board meetings for over a year and a half prior to her appointment to the board last 2 Octobers ago. And, we encourage people in the community to go and sit in and learn about a board or commission before they actually jump in. Some people will jump in and I'm not going to say this the most diplomatic way, but they think they have all the answers, and they really don't. She sat in that room, listened to what was going on, listened to the issues, got herself well-versed, and then we appointed her. Unfortunately, her family situation was such that they moved to the West Coast, but they have returned to Narragansett, so she's seeking to be back on the board. She was served on it for 8 months, and had very strong attendance. I'm not sure if it was perfect, but I know she had very good attendance.
Yeah,
and was a good participant and somebody who took the time to roll up her sleeves and learn the issues. So I am very happy to nominate her.
And so for all of the reasons that Matt just expressed, I mean, I feel the same. I watched her sit in the chamber, and attend and watch and listen, and she finally was able to get on the board, and then they moved away because of her husband's position. So she served for a short time, but she certainly put in years of watching and learning and being a part of the community, and so I supported her then I supported her then, and I support her now. I think she's a great fit for the planning board.
So my nomination of David Trentiso. David is so first and foremost, Robin was very pleasant and seems very qualified. David Trentiso is a resident in Narragansett, was an executive at Hasbro, was on the planning board and a budget board in the town of Lincoln, was also elected to the school committee. David Trentiso is now an executive in a company that he owns, a distribution company that he owns, and he certainly has dealt with planning and zoning in this town based on where he lives and the real estate that he is actually building for his family. So I I looked at David, and David, this is the second interview that he has gone through. He went and came before us the last time somebody's term was expiring, and although I appreciate Robin's tenure and her ability to, come to every meeting, I'm a firm believer that, fresh blood and new perspectives are important, so that's why I'm supporting David.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments? All right, so we have 2 names up. We have Robin. She was the first one. So all in favor of Robin, please, aye.
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 All those opposed?
No?
No.
So 3-2, motion passes. So Robin is now.
I want to say, though, I'm welcoming Robin to the board. It was just that this other candidate had such great background and experience that I just really
Agreed.
felt.
So we could call a vote on Dave as well. So we have, all those in favor of Dave?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No.
Nay. Motion fails, 2-3. Okay, next one is, we are looking at a motion to appoint and reappoint 3 individuals to the Park Advisory Board for a 3-year term. And first, we have to reappoint Thomas O'Rourke.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thomas O'Rourke for reappointment.
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes for his reappointment. And then we have, we've had 11 applicants, and we have to fill 2 of those spots. So I want to say that all the applicants look great, and I just want to know if there's a nomination.
I'll move to appoint Tom Warren.
I'll second that. Any other nominations?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Paul Roach. He has been a Parks and Rec Director in Ridgefield, Connecticut for more than 30 years. One of the qualities and the reasons I want so strongly for him to be on the board is he's already met with Steve, and he would very much like to fundraise, go out there and shake down money, big money, to help build a new rec center. So,
Second.
I'll second that motion, too. Okay, so we have 2 openings, and first we have Tom Warner. So if you're in favor of him on the Park and Rec, aye.
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 5-0, motion passes. So Tom Warner is on that, and we have another person, and his name was
Paul
Paul.
Roach.
How do you say his last name?
Roach?
Roach. Okay, all those in favor of Paul Roach?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, Paul Roach is the second new member to the Park Advisory Committee. And a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everybody. Travel safely.